First spell I ever cast in front of Westbridge Academy's entire faculty produced enough heat to soften a pat of butter, assuming the butter was patient. I stood in the center of the practical arena with my right hand extended and a trembling orange flame hovering over my palm. The target dummy waited 30 feet away. It was made from straw, dry pine, and what I suspected was professional disappointment. Above me, 3 tiers of students leaned over the rails to watch the final examination of the year. Nobody came to see me succeed. They came because Marcus had spent breakfast announcing that I might become the first student in Academy history to fail a fire test by apologizing to the fire. "Fireball," I said. The flame crossed the arena at the speed of a sleepy moth. It touched the dummy's chest, made a tiny popping noise, and vanished. A dark circle the size of a coin appeared in the straw. The examiner stared at it, then she looked at me. "Evan, was that the complete spell?" I nodded. Someone in the upper seats coughed the word legendary. Laughter rolled around the stone bowl. I wanted one simple thing. I wanted the examiner to give me the lowest passing mark, let me keep my charcoal academy coat, and send me back to the spellbook basement, where nobody expected a librarian's assistant to shout. If I failed, Westbridge would dismiss me before sundown. I would return to my uncle's candle shop and spend the rest of my life using magic to light wicks one at a time. Judging by the fireball, I might need matches. Marcus cupped both hands around his mouth. His curly blonde hair was visible even from the lowest row because he had climbed onto a bench no one had asked him to climb onto. "Try saying it like you mean it." That was easy advice from a man who ordered soup like he was declaring war. I gathered another spark. My magic had never been large, but my control was decent. I could keep a flame exactly round. I could move it without scorching my sleeve. These were useful talents in a basement and useless talents in an arena where the passing requirement was to burn a hole through the target. I drew in a breath. A blue pane appeared in front of my eyes. Name resonance awakened. Spoken technique names receive a power multiplier according to dramatic conviction. Current technique, fireball. Name quality, painfully ordinary. Conviction sincere, multiplier, 1. I forgot the spell. The orange spark fell on my boot and I stamped it out. The examiner sighed. "Do you require medical attention? I have a floating blue window." That is not generally improved by medical attention. New words appeared. Recommendation. Select a name you genuinely consider magnificent. Warning. False enthusiasm produces no resonance. Warning. Embarrassment produces total resonance failure. I had read about systems awakening under stress. Most people received useful instructions. Improve your body, gather mana, defeat monsters. Mine had apparently examined my deepest private shame and decided to install itself there. Examiner raised 2 fingers. One final attempt. My mouth went dry. I knew hundreds of possible spell names. As a child, I had filled the margins of my uncle's invoices with drawings of emperors hurling suns at dragons. I had invented attacks so long I needed arrows to continue the names on the next page. Then I turned 11, discovered other children could laugh, and buried every page behind a loose brick. The system wanted one of those names spoken in public. I would rather have returned to the candle shop. I opened my mouth anyway. Scarlet, Orbov. A snicker cut through the arena. Conviction unstable. Embarrassment detected. Multiplier, 0. The spark vanished so completely that my palm became cold. The examiner lowered her hand. "I am sorry, Evan." The arena bell broke before she could dismiss me. It hung beneath a wooden arch above the eastern seats, an iron disc wide enough to cover a carriage. One support beam split with a sound like a snapped tree. The bell tilted, tore free, and fell toward 200 students. For an instant, nobody moved. Then the eastern tier became a wall of bodies pushing against bodies. A professor threw a barrier upward, but panic broke his focus. Another mage launched a wind spell that only made the bell spin. Its lower edge struck the stone rail and sent fragments into the crowd. I raised my hand. Fireball would do nothing. A larger blast would turn the bell into molten iron and pour it over everyone beneath it. I needed enough heat to erase the metal, enough control to spare the ribbons hanging from the arch, and enough speed to reach it before it crushed the first row. The image entered my head all at once. Not a little flame, a captive sun, red at its heart, wearing a crown of gold fire. The sort of power an emperor would raise with one hand because using 2 would look anxious. I had drawn it when I was 9. I had believed it was the greatest thing any person could possibly imagine. Somewhere inside me, I still did. I stopped hearing the laughter. "Crimson sun," I began. The arena changed. The tiny spark above my palm widened into a red sphere. Heat bent the air, but it did not touch my skin. People looked away from the brightness. The bell kept falling. Of the burning emperor. Name quality, excellent. Conviction, absolute. Multiplier, 10. The red sun left my hand without a sound. It met the bell 12 feet above the seats. Iron became golden dust. The wooden support remained. The blue academy ribbons tied beneath it remained. Even the frayed end of the rope remained, swaying over a crowd that had forgotten how to scream. Warm wind carried glittering metal across the arena. It settled on coats, hair, and open mouths. I stood in the only silent place Westbridge had ever managed to create. My arm was still raised. The sun was gone. Behind me, the target dummy had not even caught fire. I lowered my hand and looked at the examiner. Does that count? She glanced at the empty space where 6 tons of iron had been. Yes, Marcus sprang onto the rail. He was holding back. That explanation moved through the crowd faster than the spell. People who had laughed began repeating it as if they had always known. The professor whose barrier failed stared at the untouched ribbons. Nora stood alone at the highest rail, copper-red braid over one shoulder and amber eyes narrowed at me. She was Westbridge's dueling champion. She had broken the West practice hall with a lightning spear and received an apology from the building. She did not clap. That worried me more than the applause. Far beneath her, beside an exit arch, a silver-masked figure turned away. I saw black robes stitched with pale curved lines, then the crowd moved between us. The examiner wrote a number on her slate, crossed it out, and wrote a larger number. Highest control score in Academy history. My first fireball missed the center. I have elected to forget your first fireball, so had everyone else. By lunch, the story said I had deliberately failed twice to test the faculty's character. By mid-afternoon, I had supposedly caught the molten bell in my bare hand. Before dinner, Marcus informed 3 visiting merchants that I had destroyed it without interrupting my nap. I found him in the dining hall, surrounded by students who had never spoken to me before. There he is, Marcus shouted, the Burning Emperor. I nearly turned around. The system pane appeared. Public title detected, Burning Emperor. Personal conviction catastrophically low, no benefit. Stop calling me that. He rejects titles, Marcus told the table. Classic, he was broad through the shoulders, always smiling, and wearing a burgundy coat he had modified with unnecessary gold trim. Marcus had passed his own practical by turning a stone wall into gravel with a sound spell. He could have been an excellent combat mage if he did not spend half his energy arranging witnesses. I pulled him into the corridor. Something happened during the exam. I was there. Something magnificent happened during the exam. I explained the blue window, the multiplier, and the humiliation condition in the lowest voice I could manage. Marcus listened without interrupting, which was how I knew he was genuinely shocked. When I finished, he gripped my shoulders. Your power rewards branding. That is the worst possible interpretation. It is the only interpretation. Evan, do you understand what this means? All those years I told you that presentation was part of combat. You told me presentation was part of breakfast, and my breakfasts are feared. I tested the system in an empty classroom. Fireball remained a fireball. Crimson Son of the Burning Emperor punched through 3 practice barriers and stopped exactly against the wall because I pictured the same crowned sun. Crimson Orb of the extremely hot monarch produced a sad puff of smoke. Marcus's suggestion, blazing sphere of maximum pain and also tax evasion, did not produce a spark. Needs work, he said. It needs burial. The important part was clear. I could not lie to the system. The long name was not automatically powerful. I had to see it, feel it, and believe it deserved to exist. The instant I imagined how I sounded to someone else, the image cracked. That made every witness a possible weapon against me. At sunset, the Academy solved that problem by putting 3,000 witnesses in the arena. I arrived after receiving a note with 6 words, duel me or admit it was luck. Nora waited at the center circle in her fitted navy combat coat. Her silver spear rested across one shoulder. Thin currents of blue light ran from the spearhead to her gloved fingers. The stands were packed. Vendors had appeared. Marcus had somehow obtained an announcer's platform and a speaking horn. You sold tickets. I accepted voluntary contributions to preserve history. Nora pointed her spear at him. Lightning split the horn in half. I like her, Marcus said. I walked into the arena. I don't want to duel. Then concede. I would love to. You would hate it tomorrow. She was right, which felt inconsiderate. Nora had watched me hide in classrooms for 2 years. She had seen me redirect sparks with perfect control and then pretend the demonstrations did not matter. She did not believe I had concealed overwhelming power. She believed something had changed, and she wanted to stand close enough to find out what. One exchange, I said, until one of us cannot continue. That sounds longer than one exchange. She moved before I finished. Her spear crossed 30 feet as a silver streak. I raised a basic wind barrier. The spearhead struck it and shattered it into ribbons of air. I barely leaned aside before blue light passed my cheek. Nora twisted, swept my legs, and stopped the butt of her spear 1 inch above my throat. The crowd groaned. Name resonance displayed an unhelpful message. Technique name incomplete. The bell was luck, someone shouted. Nora stepped back. Stand up. I did. She attacked again, not with 1 spear but 12. Lightning shaped itself around her weapon and filled the arena with bright copies. Every path closed at once. I needed a barrier large enough to catch them. The obvious image was a Storm King spreading his cloak over a battlefield. Unfortunately, Marcus had once performed a 2-hour tavern poem about the Sovereign of Storms, complete with hand gestures. Memory arrived with the name, Sovereign Mantle of the. I heard my own voice echo around the arena. A laugh came from the west tier. Embarrassment detected. Multiplier 0. My barrier collapsed. The first lightning spear hit my shoulder and spun me across the sand. The rest struck around me because Nora changed their paths at the final instant. She could have one. Instead, she planted her spear beside my head. You stopped believing it. I pushed myself up. My shoulders smoked. Thank you for announcing that. I am not mocking you. That makes one of you, the crowd murmured. Marcus had gone strangely quiet. Nora held out a hand. When I ignored it and stood alone, she looked almost pleased. I don't care what the name sounds like, she said. Make me care what it does. Then she tore the air open. Her lightning rose behind her in the shape of a giant spearhead. The pressure ripped flags from the walls. Marcus's announcer platform overturned, and he caught the rail with one hand. My charcoal cape snapped at the clasp and tore halfway down the back. I grabbed the loose cloth with 2 fingers. Nora came forward beneath the giant spear. The sight should have terrified me. Instead, the torn cape annoyed me. I pictured a mantle wide enough to cover the sky, black on the outside, and filled with 1,000 storms within. I pictured crowned figures kneeling along its hem. They were not subtle, they were not tasteful, they were magnificent. I held the cape closed and raised my other hand. Sovereign mantle of the 1,000 screaming storm kings. The name rang cleanly. Name quality exceptional, conviction absolute, multiplier 12. Black wind unfolded from my palm like cloth. Nora's giant spear struck it and stopped. The 12 smaller spears stopped around it. Every bolt of wild lightning bent, stretched, and braided itself into a blue-white halo above my head. The force continued past me. Sand turned to glass in a perfect circle. The arena walls cracked outward. My boots remained on untouched ground. I was still holding my torn cape closed with 2 fingers. Nora pushed until both hands shook. The spear did not advance. The crowd stopped cheering. Even Marcus forgot to narrate. I tilted my raised hand. The halo tightened. 1,000 captured currents pointed down at Nora from every direction. She released her weapon. I concede. The lightning vanished. Her silver spear fell point first into the glass. For a few seconds, nobody understood that the duel had ended. Nora stood empty-handed inside a ring of melted stone. I walked past her, picked up the broken half of Marcus's speaking horn, and held it out to him. You dropped this? He stared at the halo fading behind me. I may need a larger one. The sound that followed shook dust from the arena roof. Nora caught up with me at the exit. You never attacked, you conceded. Next time, finish the technique. There does not need to be a next time. There will be. She pulled the academy pin from her collar and fastened my torn cape so it stopped dragging. And she walked away before I could return it. By morning, I had a new reputation, a rival, and 6 marriage proposals Marcus claimed he had rejected on my behalf after evaluating their dramatic potential. I also had a problem beneath my feet. The academy alarm began during breakfast. The floor bucked. Bowls jumped from tables. A crack ran across the dining hall, widened, and swallowed an entire bench. Cold air rushed up from below carrying the sound of something chewing. The old dungeon gate beneath Westbridge had opened, and when the first pale creature pulled itself through the floor, it opened a mouth lined with black rings and swallowed the alarm sound. The creature's mouth widened until it was larger than its head. The black rings inside its throat spun once, and every sound in the dining hall disappeared. Benches scraped without noise. Students screamed with open mouths. A serving tray hit the floor and bounced in perfect silence. I heard only my own heartbeat, and then the creature swallowed that too. It lunged. Nora's spear entered its chest from the side. Blue light flashed soundlessly through its pale body. The creature folded around the weapon, yet the black rings kept turning. 2 more clawed out of the crack, then 6. I formed a fireball and spoke the name. My lips moved, nothing left them. The spell crossed 10 feet, struck a creature, and left the same coin-sized burn as my exam attempt. Name resonance required a spoken name. Inside the creature's silence, I was the mage I had been yesterday. That would have been frightening if Nora had not looked so delighted. She ripped her spear free, kicked the first creature into the crack, and pointed at the doors. Her meaning was obvious. Get everyone out. Marcus climbed onto a table and began waving both arms. Nobody could hear him, but years of unnecessary performance had prepared him for this exact disaster. He pointed students toward the west corridor, mimed teeth with his fingers, then somehow acted out the floor collapsing, the academy being devoured, and his personal objection to dying before lunch. It worked. Panic became movement. I sent 3 small wind bursts beneath an overturned table and lifted it away from trapped students. Basic spell names gave no bonus, but my control had not vanished. Nora guarded the crack while Marcus led the dining hall out. I was last to reach the corridor. Sound returned the moment I crossed the doors. The academy alarm struck one delayed note. Every drop plate, scream, and crack arrived at once behind me. The noise hit like a physical wave. The headmaster's voice followed through the wall crystals. All upper halls evacuate. The sealed gate has opened beneath the east foundation. Lower library group is unaccounted for. The resonance bell chamber is losing support. I stopped. The lower library group included 11 first-year students who had been cataloging dungeon records. The resonance bell was older than Westbridge. Its tone powered the academy barriers and kept the underground gate asleep. If it fell into the gate, every creature beneath us could climb out. Nora reached the corridor with pale blood on one sleeve. The mouths eat sound before magic. I noticed. Good, I would hate to explain it. Marcus came back against the flow of evacuees. Please tell me we are going down there. We are not. Floor shifted. Somewhere below, stone broke. Nora looked at me. That was the bell chamber, I said. Marcus smiled. So we are going down there. I wanted to preserve my recently acquired reputation by remaining far away from anything designed to eat the source of my power. Instead, I ran toward the east stairwell. The first 2 levels were empty. On the third, silence climbed the stairs like cold water. Our footsteps vanished one by one. Marcus kept talking after we could no longer hear him, perhaps because silence had no known effect on Marcus. The lower library had split down the middle. Shelves leaned into a black gap. 11 students huddled on the far side beneath a cracked barrier. Pale creatures circled them, opening and closing their ringed mouths. Beyond the library, the passage to the bell chamber had collapsed. Nora leaped across the gap and struck before the creatures turned. Her lightning worked because the spell had already formed around her spear, outside the deepest silence. She cut down 2, but a third swallowed the thunder from her weapon. The blue light died. I could cross. I could not carry 11 people back while the floor continued falling. Marcus tapped my shoulder and held up a slate. Name something ice-related. I wrote, I cannot speak. He underlined the obvious flaw and pointed upward. The ceiling above our side remained outside the creature's strongest field. Sound faded near their mouths. It was not absent everywhere. I climbed a fallen shelf until my head entered a thin layer where I could hear stone grinding. The creatures noticed. 3 turned toward me. Ice was not my best element. I could frost a window and preserve lunch. But I knew one image that had frightened me since childhood. A frozen palace on the moon, empty except for a tyrant seated above the graves of everyone who had challenged him. It was melodramatic, lonely, and completely unreasonable. I loved it. Glacial funeral palace of the moonlit tyrant. The words descended through the library. White frost spread from my boots, crossed the broken shelves, and climbed into the air. Formed arches, pillars, and a translucent throne above the gap. The pale creatures froze with their mouths open. The collapsing ceiling stopped in midair, each boulder held inside a clear block of ice. A bridge extended to the trapped students. Name quality, exceptional. Conviction, absolute. Multiplier, 11. The students crossed under suspended tons of stone. Nora carried the smallest one. Marcus walked backward on the bridge, silently presenting the frozen monsters as if he had arranged an exhibition. The ice palace groaned. I could hold it long enough to evacuate or use it to clear the collapsed bell passage. Not both. Nora reached my side. Take them up. I need the bell. The academy needs living students. The academy needs both. The last student crossed. I closed my hand. The frozen palace did not collapse. Instead, I pushed every arch and pillar toward the damaged ceiling, packing ice into the fractures. It would hold for minutes, not hours. We ran deeper. Past the library, the tunnel narrowed. Pale creatures appeared on walls and ceilings, their fingers sunk into stone. Nora fought without lightning, using the spear as ordinary steel. Marcus discovered his sound magic returned if he struck them while their mouths were closed. I used wind to slam their jaws shut. None of it looked majestic. It worked. We reached the bell chamber and found the bronze bell tilted over a pit. It was 30 feet tall, covered in carved names of forgotten mages. A black iron clapper hung at its center. Half the floor had fallen away, and the remaining chains were snapping one at a time. A creature crouched beneath it. The smaller things had been thin and pale. This one filled the chamber. Black rings covered its chest, arms, and eyeless face. Each ring opened into a mouth. When it breathed, the bell moved toward it. It was not climbing out of the dungeon. It was pulling the academy down. On the opposite ledge, the silver-masked observer knelt beside the bell and cut a glowing shard from its rim. "Hey," Marcus shouted. The observer looked at us. His black robes carried the same pale wave patterns I had noticed in the arena. He placed the shard inside his coat and stepped backward into a doorway of gray mist. Nora threw her spear. It passed through the mist after him and struck stone. The giant creature attacked. Every mouth opened. The chamber lost sound. Then it lost pressure. Air rushed toward the creature in a visible spiral. Marcus flew from his feet and caught a chain. Nora clung to her embedded spear. I slid toward the pit. The black clapper swung above me. I jumped, caught it with both arms, and used its weight to stop my fall. The iron was cold. The creature pulled harder. Chains snapped. The bell tilted another foot. I needed to freeze the guardian and the entire chamber before the floor vanished. The moonlit palace image returned. I climbed onto the clapper, braced one foot against its iron edge, and began the name. Glacial Funeral Palace. One of the creature's mouths swallowed the words. The spell broke. The guardian dragged the bell lower. Hostile interruption detected. Technique incomplete. That was the second rule Silas's observer had come to learn. Long names gave the enemy time to stop me. The creature had dozens of mouths. Everyone turned toward my face. I took the deepest breath I could and shouted the first word at the mouth directly below me. Glacial. It opened wider and swallowed the sound. Nora ripped her spear from the wall and drove it through that mouth. 2 others turned toward her. Funeral, Marcus struck a chain with his sound spell. The bell answered with a low bronze note. Half the mouth snapped toward it. Palace, I jumped from the clapper. Pale arms reached upward. Of the moonlit tyrant, the completed name hit the chamber from 4 directions, reflected by the bell. Cold exploded beneath me. The guardian froze from the innermost rings outward. Frost sealed each mouth, spread over its limbs, and turned its massive body into the central statue of a palace larger than the chamber. White towers punched into the ceiling and locked every broken slab in place. The bell stopped above the pit. I landed on the guardian's frozen head. The silence ended. The last bronze note was still ringing. Nora looked up from the ledge. You used us to divide the mouths. I shouted at the one you stabbed. So you did. She sounded almost disappointed that I had not planned it. The academy professors arrived minutes later. They found Marcus swinging from a chain, Nora standing among frozen mouths, and me walking down an ice staircase while the dungeon guardian knelt beneath the resonance bell. The first-year students were alive. The temporary palace still held the lower library together. The headmaster gave me the bell's black clapper after they removed it. The bell cannot safely ring until the stolen shard is recovered, he said. The clapper answered your magic, keep it. The thing was 4 feet long and weighed more than I did. Marcus nodded solemnly. A subtle weapon. I am not carrying this. By evening, he had attached a leather strap. The stolen shard left a trail. Every time the remaining bell moved, pale light pointed southwest through the missing section. The faculty traced it toward Harbor City, where the grand exhibition would begin in 3 days. They also identified the figure who had taken it. Silas had no academy rank and belonged to no recognized order. He traveled inside a structure called the Quiet Cathedral, leaving towns without spoken magic. He had spent years collecting objects tied to voice, music, and incantation. Until he stole from Westbridge, most people treated him as a story used to frighten loud apprentices. Now the story had my power's weakness in his pocket. I intended to go quietly, recover the shard, and return before anyone in Harbor City connected me to the arena. Marcus packed 6 burgundy coats. Nora sharpened her spear. My torn cape had been repaired with a visible silver seam. I tried to remove Nora's academy pin and discovered she had bent the clasp closed. We reached Harbor City on the first morning of the exhibition. The place held more people than I had ever seen. Towers rose around a blue bay crowded with spellships. Floating platforms displayed weapons, beasts, and famous mages. Every street had banners advertising someone as the continent's strongest. Nobody knew me for 9 wonderful minutes. A child pointed at my cape. That's him. His mother looked over. The bellboy, the burning librarian. Someone else heard. Within moments, a crowd formed. The rumors had changed during our journey. In Harbor City, I had apparently defeated Nora while reading a book, frozen a dungeon because it interrupted my sleep, and carried the resonance bell here as exercise. The black clapper on my back did not help. Marcus climbed onto a fountain. Citizens, please remain calm. Evan will answer respectful questions after his dramatic entrance. This was the entrance, I told him, not with that posture. Nora pushed through the crowd and gave me the expression she used before lightning happened. The shard points toward the central harbor. We followed its pale glow to the grand exhibition arena. Main demonstration had already begun. A famous archmage stood on a platform over the water, building a golden sphere above his staff. Thousands filled the shore. He announced that his ultimate technique could flatten 6 city blocks. Why would the city invite him to prove that? I asked. Good promotion, Marcus said. The archmage released the sphere toward an empty sea barrier. It grew until daylight turned gold. Then a shadow crossed the water. Cathedral sailed into the harbor. It was built from black stone, with narrow towers and no doors. Gray cloth covered every bell. The building moved on the sea without a ship beneath it. As it passed, waves lost their sound. The crowd's cheers disappeared row by row. The archmage's golden sphere reached the outer tower and vanished. Not exploded, not blocked. It simply ceased to have a name, a sound, or an effect. Silas stood at the cathedral's highest balcony. His silver mask covered his mouth. Pale lines ran over his robes like frozen echoes. He raised one finger, and the entire exhibition became silent. The black clapper on my back vibrated. I could preserve one spoken breath near it, no more. Silas turned his masked face toward me from half a mile away. He had expected me. The cathedral's base opened. A gray wave moved across the harbor, flattening every spell it touched. Ships dropped from the air. Barrier platforms cracked. Thousands of people ran toward streets already packed with thousands more. I could destroy the cathedral with the crimson sun, perhaps, but the harbor crowd surrounded it. I needed to expose the structure, separate it from everyone, and keep the water from crushing the shore. The bay was wide enough. The image came from a mural in the Academy's forbidden stairwell, an emperor seated on a blue throne while 9 tidal beasts curled at his feet. The painter had given every beast a different crown. It was excessive in a way that felt almost scholarly. I pulled the bell clapper from my back and planted it against the stone key. The vibration climbed through my arm. One breath. Silas lowered his hand. The gray wave reached me. Cerulean throne of the 9 tidal calamities. The harbor stood up. Water rose on every side of the cathedral, not as a wave, but as a vast circular wall. 9 crests shaped like crowned sea beasts curled along its top. Ships slid safely down the inner surface. People on the shore remained dry enough to stare upward. At the center, the quiet cathedral rested on bare seabed. I lifted the clapper. The entire vertical ocean rotated. Black towers groaned. Gray cloth ripped from the muted bells. The cathedral turned beneath the pressure and emerged from the bay trapped inside a shining throne of water. Silas did not move from the balcony. I stepped onto the nearest wave. It carried me upward until I stood above Harbor City on the crest of a vertical sea. My repaired cape snapped behind me. Below, famous mages who had spent the morning announcing their rankings could only look up. Silas spoke through the silence. His voice was thin and perfectly clear. Evan, he knew my name. More importantly, he knew exactly how to say it without admiration. Did you practice that phrase alone? He asked. Or did your friend help? Laughter came from the cathedral. Dozens of masked followers appeared at the windows. They repeated my technique name in childish voices. Some stretched the syllables. Others bowed like stage performers. The sound traveled through Silas's field and into the part of me I had not yet learned to defend. The crowned beasts along the water wall flickered. Embarrassment detected. Multiplier falling. Silas had stolen a bell shard to study resonance. He had learned that he did not need to overpower my magic. He only needed to make me hear myself through his contempt. The ocean began to fall. The ocean did not fall all at once. It peeled away from my control in 9 enormous sections, each crowned beast dissolving into ordinary water above a different part of Harbor City. Silas watched from the cathedral balcony. His followers continued chanting my technique name in squeaky voices. I heard every flaw in it. Cerulean sounded like something painted on a teacup. 9 was an arbitrary number. Tidal calamities felt like a phrase Marcus would print on a dinner invitation. The throne beneath my feet became foam. Nora landed beside me on a spear of lightning. Stop listening to them. Excellent suggestion. You wanted the cathedral exposed. It is exposed. The obvious answer was to release the whole spell and let the water crush it. That would also crush the harbor, the exhibition, and a large number of people who had purchased fried dough expecting a much safer afternoon. I looked down. The crowd was no longer laughing. Silas's followers were. Harbor City was staring up at the person holding its ocean in the air. The technique name was ridiculous. The sight was not. I stopped trying to defend the words. I pictured the mural again. The Blue Emperor did not explain why his beasts wore crowns. He had an ocean standing behind his chair. Explanation would have weakened the composition. My embarrassment faded. Conviction restored. Multiplier. 9. The water wall hardened. I lowered both hands slowly. Instead of crashing inward, the 9 sections curled over the city and joined into a clear dome. Rain fell straight down into empty canals. Not one drop crossed the crowded streets. Silas's followers stopped chanting. They helped, I said. Nora glanced at me. How? I became too annoyed to feel embarrassed. I can do that for you whenever necessary. She jumped toward the cathedral before I could decline. Silas turned one hand. Silence folded around her. Nora's lightning vanished, but her momentum carried her through a window. Marcus had reached a floating exhibition platform and was using the broken speaking horn despite the absence of sound. His gestures directed the famous mages toward the cathedral's lower supports. I walked down the inner face of the ocean. Each step froze beneath my boot. From the shore, it must have looked as if I descended a blue staircase from the sky. I did not plan that effect. I also did not hurry to correct it. Silas waited until I reached his balcony. Up close, his mask was smooth silver without an opening over the mouth. His voice came from the pale lines in his robe. You require noise to imagine power, he said. You brought a choir. Mockery is not noise, it is correction. Behind him, Nora sent 2 followers through a wall. Silas did not look away from me. The world has mistaken dramatic language for meaning. You are the purest symptom I have found. I met you 6 minutes ago, and already you have lifted an ocean to avoid admitting your spell name was foolish. That was close enough to the truth that I disliked him immediately. I raised the bell clapper. He held the stolen shard against it. Pale light connected the 2 pieces, and my preserved breath tore out of the iron. Silence closed around me. Silas stepped forward. Gray force struck my chest and threw me through the balcony doors. I hit a pillar, rolled, and caught the clapper before it fell into stairwell. Basic wind formed at my fingers, but he erased each burst with a gesture. He was not physically stronger than Nora. He did not need to be. Every spell inside the cathedral lost its spoken shape before it formed. Nora attacked him from behind. Silas shifted the shard. Her spear stopped ringing, but the steel point continued. It cut a bright line across his silver mask. He recoiled. I drove the black clapper into the floor. Bronze sound burst through the cathedral. The preserved breath was gone, but the clapper still remembered the bell. For one instant, Silas's silence developed a crack. I did not have time for 9 calamities. Crimson sun. A red sphere appeared against his chest. It was smaller than the spell that erased the arena bell. It did not need to be large inside a room. Silas flung himself backward and wrapped the stolen shard in gray mist. sun burned through 3 layers before he disappeared. The cathedral shook. Every covered bell in its towers rang at once. The structure began sinking into the exposed seabed. Nora grabbed the edge of my cape. You should leave. I can stop it. You are carrying half a bell and standing inside the other half. The cathedral folded inward. We jumped from the broken balcony as the ocean dome returned to the harbor. Nora rode her lightning. I fell 30 feet before cerulean water caught me and deposited me on the quay in a seated position. Marcus ran over. Was that intentional? Completely. The cathedral disappeared beneath the bay. Water settled without crossing the sea walls. When Harbor City finally made sound again, the first thing I heard was the crowd shouting my technique name correctly. Silas escaped with half the bell shard. The other half lay fused to the black clapper where his magic had struck it. We had not won, but we had taken something back. That evening, every exhibition ranking board changed. My name appeared at the top of lists I had never entered. Strongest young fire mage, greatest control display, most destructive librarian. Marcus objected only to the last one because it lacked dignity. Silas sent his answer through every sound crystal in the city. His silver mask appeared above the harbor. A ring of robed singers stood behind him. In 1 month, he said, the Imperial League will gather the continent's loudest champions. Evan will demonstrate whether confidence survives an honest audience. The image changed to the league emblem. The tournament winner would receive access to the vault beneath the final arena, where Silas claimed he would unveil the shame choir. Name was not subtle. It did not need to be. He had built a weapon around the instant my mind turned against itself. I returned to Westbridge to prepare. Training with name resonance was unlike ordinary magic practice. I could not repeat grand phrases until they became comfortable, because comfort weakened the image. I could not let Marcus add words indefinitely, because after the 5th Emperor and 3rd Apocalypse, I stopped believing any of them. Nora solved the problem by attacking whenever my names became lazy. Inferno Lancev, her spear struck my barrier. Too common, she said. You hit me before I finished. A real enemy will be ruder. Marcus sat beside the practice ring with a notebook. Try Inferno Lance of the extremely motivated volcano. No, the volcano that took this personally. My flame flickered. He pointed excitedly. You liked that? I did not. The system displayed conviction, uncertain but promising. I learned that humor did not automatically destroy grandeur. Sometimes the most ridiculous detail made the image real. A Storm Emperor was distant. Storm Emperor furious because someone had not paid his dragons was a person I could picture. My basic spells also changed. After channeling amplified fire, ice, water, and wind, the unamplified versions became stronger. Fireball could now burn through the practice dummy. Nora called that improvement. Marcus called it the least interesting thing I had done all month. The Imperial League filled a crater outside the capital. 40,000 people surrounded 8 floating arenas. Champions arrived through portals, on beasts, and once inside a golden carriage carried by animated statues. Marcus insisted we enter on the ordinary West Road, then paid a wind mage to blow my cape at the correct moment. Nora noticed, your dramatic entrance appears to have weather. Coincidence. The wind is following only you. Localized coincidence. The tournament began with 64 fighters. I did not need ultimate spells in the early rounds. Wind barrier sent 1 swordsman out of bounds. An ordinary ice floor defeated a flame dancer who had spent too long setting her cape on fire. Each victory made the audience more disappointed. They had come for the names. In the 3rd round, I faced a giant champion named Grant. He carried a stone club larger than my dormitory bed and had won his previous match by breaking the arena in half. He looked at the black bell clapper across my back and laughed. You brought a stick. It is technically part of a bell. Will you ring for help? He charged. I could have used Crimson Sun. It would have ended the match and probably the matches in 3 neighboring arenas. Instead, I picked up a pebble. Grant's club came down. Pebble of the petty Star Emperor who absolutely refuses to move twice. Stone left my fingers. It struck the center of his club. The entire weapon stopped. Grant continued moving around it, lifted off his feet, and crossed the arena backward. He landed outside the boundary without releasing the handle. The pebble hovered where it had hit, glowing purple. I walked over, caught it, and returned it to the ground. The drink Marcus had placed on the arena rail did not spill. There was a pause before 40,000 people began laughing and shouting at the same time. Grant sat outside the boundary, less upset by losing than by losing to geology. The system gave the name a multiplier of 14. I told Marcus. He wiped tears from his eyes. Petty Star Emperor is your strongest title. It was the refusal to move twice. Of course, efficiency. Nora advanced through the opposite bracket. She defeated every opponent with the same silver spear and no announcement at all. When reporters asked what technique she hoped to see from me, she said, a complete one. Silas did not appear. The shame choir remained beneath the final arena. The closer I came to it, the more I heard faint laughter between ordinary sounds. My semi-final opponent was the Archmage from Harbor City. He wanted to repair his reputation after the quiet cathedral erased his golden sphere. He filled the arena with 6 suns and made sure the audience understood each could destroy a city block. I raised Sovereign Mantle. The black wind unfolded with less effort than before. It caught all 6 suns, shrank them, and arranged them like buttons down the front of my repaired cape. The Archmage stared. "They match," Marcus announced from somewhere he was not authorized to be. I returned 5 suns to the Archmage's staff. The 6th hovered over my palm. He stepped out of bounds voluntarily. That left Nora. The final arena descended until it rested over the hidden vault. The other 7 arenas moved aside. Every spectator could see us. Silas had designed the moment carefully. The larger my audience, the sharper the shame choir would become. Nora rolled her shoulders. Lightning climbed her spear. "If I concede early," she said, "you will haunt every tournament until you prove what the attack would have done. I do not haunt. You descend from vertical oceans." She struck the arena. A forest of silver spears erupted around me. I stepped between the first 3, blocked the 4th with the bell clapper, and let Sovereign Mantle catch the rest. Nora used the black wind as a path. She ran up my own barrier and drove her real spear toward my shoulder. I released the mantle. We fell together through blue lightning. My wind caught me. Nora twisted and landed on one knee. She smiled. It was the first time I had seen her enjoy a fight openly. The next exchange shattered the arena boundary. Nora's spear became a thunder creature with wings spread across the crater. I answered with the crimson sun. Red fire and silver light met overhead, turning afternoon into a violet storm. Neither of us aimed to finish. She wanted to force a new level from me. I wanted to discover whether I could create one with everyone watching. I pictured a dragon made from thunder, not wild like Nora's lightning, but perfectly coiled, wearing a crown between its horns. It would descend without touching the audience. It would stop close enough for Nora to see every scale. I began the name. Judgment of the Crown Thunder Dragon. The vault opened. Laughter flooded the arena. It came from beneath the stone, from the walls, from the speaking crystals, and finally from the spectators themselves. People covered their mouths horrified, yet the sound continued through them. Shame choir forced every witness to hear the most embarrassing possible version of my voice. My thunder dragon lost its crown. The name sounded like a child arranging impressive words without understanding any of them. I saw myself in the center of the arena, cape torn, hand raised, begging strangers to consider me magnificent. Embarrassment detected. Multiplier, 0. The dragon vanished. Nora's spear stopped 1 inch from my chest. She could have ended the match. Instead, she turned and threw the weapon through the arena floor. Silver lightning split the vault doors. Below us stood Silas and 200 singers in gray masks. "Continue," Nora said. I tried. "Judgment of." My voice cracked. The audience laughed harder. The system window became blank. Silas lifted the bell shard. The singers' laughter condensed into a gray beam that struck the sky. Something enormous moved above the Capitol. A serpent uncoiled from the clouds, long enough to circle the city. Its scales were black mouths. Its eyes opened over the arena, and every spell in the crater bent toward it. Silas had not built the shame choir merely to defeat me in a tournament. He had built it to make every powerful mage helpless while his creature fed. The sky serpent descended. The sky serpent opened its mouths. Every active spell in the Imperial League crater tore away from its caster. Fire, lightning, barriers, and summoned weapons rose in bright streams. The serpent swallowed them. Its body thickened across the clouds. The shame choir kept laughing. I stood in the ruined final arena with an empty system pane, and no grand technique I could say without hearing myself as a fraud. Nora's spear remained embedded in the vault floor. Marcus had fallen from the announcer platform, but he was already climbing back up. Silas looked at me from below. A new crack crossed his silver mask where my shortened crimson sun had reached him. "This is honesty," he said through the choir. "Your power existed only while strangers agreed to admire it." I threw an ordinary fireball at him. It burned through the sleeve of his robe. Silas stepped back. He had expected nothing. My fireball was no longer the sleepy spark from the exam. Repeated resonance had strengthened the spell beneath the name. It could not erase a bell, but it could break stone, and it did not care whether anyone laughed. I launched 6 more. Silas wrapped himself in gray silence. The flames vanished against it, but Nora used the distraction to retrieve her spear. She dropped into the vault. 200 singers turned toward her. "Get them out of the crater," I told Marcus. He lifted the broken speaking horn. "Who?" "Everyone." "I was hoping you meant the serpent." The creature descended until its shadow covered the Capitol. Its tail remained wrapped around the highest clouds. Famous champions attacked with unspoken magic physical weapons, anything the shame choir could not humiliate. The serpent swallowed each effect and brushed them aside. I used wind to launch myself onto the outer wall. The crowd surged toward the exits. Above the city, barrier towers flickered as the creature fed on their power. I could fight with plain spells. I could not defeat something large enough to eat the Capitol's defenses. The system pane remained blank. The serpent's head lowered over the crater. One eye was larger than the final arena. Black mouths opened along its jaw. They pulled at the magic inside my body. I remembered being 6 years old behind my uncle's candle shop. Before I learned embarrassment, I had run between stacked crates holding a stick. In my private war, I was the last fire mage alive. My greatest attack had not been elegant. I had invented it because every previous attack failed, and 6-year-old me understood that adding final, extra, and really angry must solve the problem. I had shouted it at rain clouds until my uncle asked me to come inside. The memory did not feel sophisticated. It felt perfect. I raised one hand toward the serpent. Super extra final fireball, I said. The choir's laughter sharpened. A white spark formed above my palm. Of the really angry guy, the system pane blazed gold. Name quality personally definitive. Conviction absolute. Multiplier 20. The laughter did not stop, but it no longer entered me. White spark expanded into a comet. It was not crowned. It had no throne, dragon, emperor, funeral, or calamity. It was the exact attack a lonely 6-year-old had believed could defeat anything. The serpent tried to swallow it. Every mouth along its head opened. The comet entered the central one, passed through the creature's body, and emerged above the clouds. White fire traced the entire length of the serpent from within. For one bright second, a skeleton longer than the capital appeared across the sky. Then the creature burst into harmless sparks. The sun dimmed behind my fireball. The shame choir fell silent. My arm remained raised over a city covered in drifting white light. I repeated the name in an ordinary voice. Super extra final fireball of the really angry guy. Nobody laughed. Marcus found the speaking horn. He has been holding that one back since childhood. That was technically true, which made it the most responsible announcement he had ever made. Nora dragged the last masked singer from the vault. Silas was gone. He had taken the remaining bell shard through a gray doorway, but the serpent's destruction exposed something beneath the clouds, a staircase made from pale stone, descending from an opening in the sky. The stairway ended above the capital. Every surviving champion stared at it, then at me. They had spent years competing for continental ranks. I had just defeated the creature that consumed all their ultimate techniques with a spell named after an angry guy. Grant, still holding his broken club, spoke first. That name was terrible. It worked. That makes it worse. The tournament officials offered me the championship. Nora objected until they offered her second place without counting the interrupted final. She objected more strongly. Eventually they listed us both as undefeated and gave the trophy to Marcus by mistake because he was standing on the award platform. I cared more about the stairway. The fused bell shard pointed upward. Silas had taken the rest there. According to records found beneath the arena, the path led to a ruined celestial arena called the Court of Measured Heaven. At its center burned an ember that could break any mortal silence. Silas needed it for his engine. We climbed the next morning. Marcus came as far as the 7th step before an invisible wall returned him to the ground. Nora reached the highest cloud and stopped at a black gate. One person, she read from the inscription. One voice, one judgment. Convenient, Marcus called from far below. Nora struck the gate. Did not move. I will wait here, she said. For how long? Until you return or I break it. The gate opened for me. Beyond it, clouds formed a white sea under a black sky. Thousands of stone seats circled an arena without walls. Floating tablets occupied most of them, each covered in writing that changed when I looked away. At the center stood a woman in layered white and black robes. Her white hair was tied in a severe knot. Violet eyes examined my repaired cape, the bell clapper, and the tournament dust on my boots. You are late, she said. I did not know I was invited. You were not. The gate closed behind me. The woman introduced herself as Vera, keeper of measured speech. Her voice made the floating tablets turn in perfect unison. She had watched mortal magic for centuries and found our growing taste for shouted names undisciplined. I had found the one place in existence where Silas might receive a warm welcome. He came here, I said. The masked mortal requested the celestial ember. I refused. Where is he now? Falling, she pointed over the arena edge. A small black figure disappeared through the cloud sea. I liked Vera immediately. Then she raised one hand and the pressure forced me to my knees. You opened a sealed path by feeding theatrical conviction into a creature of silence, she said. You will demonstrate why I should not close the path through you. The celestial ember floated behind her, a flame with no color. Silas needed it to finish his continental silence engine. I needed it to destroy that engine. Vera did not care about either objective. She wanted one elegant spell. No inflated titles, she said. No emperors, no calamities, no unpaid dragons. You heard that one. Your blonde companion has been shouting possibilities at the gate. The pressure increased. I tried Crimson Sun. The spell formed at ordinary strength. Divine Law pressed every exaggeration into its literal meaning. A sun I could not actually create became a small red flame. I tried Sovereign Mantle. Black wind covered my shoulders and nowhere else. Vera remained unimpressed. Your gift mistakes volume for magnitude. It specifically does not. Then prove it. Stone figures rose from the arena floor. 100 faceless judges surrounded me, each carrying a tablet. They attacked in complete order. No mockery, no interruption, no chaos. That made them more difficult than Silas's followers. My long names had time to finish, but divine law trimmed their effects until only the literal technique remained. I fought with control. Wind moved the first rank aside. Ice locked the second rank's feet. A basic fireball shattered a tablet near my head. The judges repaired themselves each time they touched the arena. Vera watched without expression. I understood her test. She did not want me to find a loophole. She wanted a display worthy of the ember without relying on length. Above us, the cloud sea covered half the sky. I pictured it splitting from one clean command. No throne, no list of rulers, no creature wearing unnecessary jewelry, just heaven itself responding because I had spoken. The image felt more dramatic than any adjective I could add. I lowered the bell clapper. Heaven, I said, applaud. White fire rose in a vertical line. The cloud sea split from the arena to the horizon. Light poured through the gap. Every stone judge stopped. Their floating tablets lowered at the same instant, as if the entire court had bowed. Vera's violet eyes widened by the smallest visible amount. The system showed no numerical multiplier. It displayed one word. Accepted. The colorless ember crossed the arena and entered the bell clapper. Black iron gained a white line along its center. Length was never the source, Vera said. I knew that. You learned it 4 seconds ago. I suspected it. She looked toward the split clouds. Sila serves the first silence. It existed before mortals named fire, sky, or fear. Names allow you to imagine beyond what exists. It considers that an error. Does it have a less dramatic title? No. Interesting. Vera ignored that. Silas had built 3 anchors for a silence engine. The resonance bell shard would let him spread the first silence through every spoken spell on the continent. Westbridge was the first anchor point because the bell had protected the region for centuries. The academy alarm rang below us. Even from heaven, I heard it cut off mid-note. The western horizon turned gray. I stepped toward the gate. The trial is not complete, Vera said. My home is disappearing. If you leave with the ember, the first silence will notice you. I put the clapper across my back. It already sent a serpent. The gate opened. Nora stood outside with her spear buried halfway through the black stone. She examined the white line in the clapper. Did you win? She gave me the ember. That is not an answer. Vera's voice came from behind me. He was adequate. Nora looked at the split cloud sea, then back at Vera. Your standards are stupid. The gate closed before divine lightning struck her. He descended through a world-losing sound. Villages below the stairway were gray circles. Birds flew across their edges and became silent. Rivers entered and stopped making ripples. The largest circle covered the land around Westbridge. Marcus waited at the base with a stack of enormous cue cards. One said, "Welcome back." The next said, "We may have a problem." The third said, "I prepared visual commentary." We ran west. Sound vanished 10 miles from the academy. The silence was deeper than the dungeon creature's field. It did not merely swallow noise. It removed the idea that noise had happened. An army of gray-robed figures surrounded Westbridge. Above them floated the first anchor, a black ring 100 feet across with the stolen bell shard set at its center. A transformed enforcer stood beneath it. His body was covered in silver plates shaped like closed mouths. Students and professors held the academy wall. Their spells became colorless the moment they crossed the barrier. I entered through a storm that made no sound. People saw the repaired cape and opened a path. Marcus lifted a cue card over his head. EVAN has arrived. He flipped it. Please imagine thunder. Nora pushed his cards down and charged the enforcer. I raised the clapper. The celestial ember burned, but spoken resonance could not begin in absolute silence. I traced Crimson Sun in fire. The letters formed above the battlefield and produced an ordinary flame. I carved Sovereign Mantle across the ground. Wind stirred and died. The anchor had not countered my multiplier. It had removed the door into it. Nora's spear struck the enforcer. Silver plates absorbed her lightning. He caught the shaft and threw her through the academy gate. I launched myself with basic wind and hit him with the bell clapper. White line flared. One silver plate cracked. The enforcer struck back. I crossed the clapper in front of me. His fist drove me through 2 stone walls and into my old examination arena. Stands were empty. The target dummy had finally been replaced. Outside, the anchor lowered. Gray darkness pressed against the academy barrier. When it touched the resonance bell chamber, the silence would become permanent. Nora landed beside me. Blood ran from her forehead. She held up one finger. Then she pointed at the celestial ember. 1 second of sound. That was all she thought she could create by overloading her spear against the anchor. I needed a name short enough to fit and powerful enough to cut a 100-foot ring in half. Heaven, applaud had been Vera's test. It belonged to the cloud arena. I pictured a star falling into a grave so deep its light cut the world on the way down. One word held the whole image. Nora ran. The enforcer turned. Her spear became pure silver and struck the center of his closed-mouth armor. Every lightning channel in the weapon detonated. Sound returned for 1 heartbeat. I planted the bell clapper. Stargrave. The celestial ember became a white line across the battlefield. It passed through the enforcer without touching him. It crossed the gray army without touching them. It reached the floating anchor and divided the black ring, the bell shard, and the silence above Westbridge in one stroke. Sound returned all at once. Delayed crash flattened tents for miles. Every suspended shout, footstep, spell, and falling stone arrived together. The academy windows burst outward. The gray army dropped its weapons and covered its ears. I was already seated on the broken half of the anchor. The enforcer looked down. Every silver plate on his body fell apart along a perfect white seam. Marcus climbed from the rubble holding a cue card. Said too loud, he turned it over. Perfect. The destroyed anchor released thousands of stolen voices. They rose as pale streams and repeated fragments of Silas's orders. 2 remaining anchors were moving east with armies around them. Their destruction would open a place called the World Amphitheater. Silas wanted them destroyed. He had built a siege that forced us to complete the next stage of his plan. The academy cheered anyway. They had survived. For the first time, the people shouting my name were the same people who had watched my fireball fail. I stood on the anchor and let them continue for exactly long enough to seem indifferent. Then the western sky split. Far beyond the continent, a black shape covered one edge of the moon. The 2 remaining anchors did not wait for us. One moved north toward the glass plains. The other crossed the southern forest on the backs of chained stone beasts. Around each marched an army wearing gray bands over their mouths. Many were Silas's followers. More were soldiers caught when the silence passed over their towns. Black threads connected their weapons to the anchors, forcing them to move whenever the rings moved. Destroying the anchors carelessly would kill everyone tied to them. Silas had finally created a problem I could not solve by making the explosion larger. I disliked the lack of consideration. Westbridge's professors wanted to divide our forces. Nora was already walking toward the southern road before the discussion ended. Delay that anchor, I told her. Do not break it until I reach you. How long? Long enough. That is not a duration. Marcus raised a cue card left over from the siege. It said, dramatically long. Nora broke the card with her spear and departed. I took the northern front. The bell clapper carried the celestial ember in half a shard. It could cut the anchor. The danger was everything around it. The glass plains had once been desert. Magical war melted the sand into a flat silver surface stretching to the horizon. The northern army marched across its own reflections. Their anchor floated behind them, turning daylight gray. They saw me coming because Marcus had found a red cloak and was waving it from a hill. Why are you here? I asked. Audience control. There is an army, a captive audience. First arrows rose. I used sovereign mantle. Black wind spread low over the glass, caught every arrow and placed them point down in neat rows. The forced soldiers kept advancing. Black threads pulled their arms. The anchor rang, not with sound, with interruption. Every time I began a name, smaller bells around the ring struck inside my thoughts. Crimson cut off, glacial cut off, cerulean cut off. Silas had learned from the dungeon guardian. I walked forward using only basic magic. Wind removed arrows. Ice trapped boots without touching skin. Fire melted weapons at their handles. The army surrounded me, but no one could land a blow. Marcus followed at what he considered a safe distance and announced each movement to people who were trying to stab us. At the center, a gray commander raised a blade tied to 12 black threads. He said you need to finish, she told me, so we ring first. He talks too much for a servant of silence. I lifted the bell clapper. Every interruption bell struck. I closed my mouth. Bells struck again when I inhaled. Silas had tuned them to intention. They would continue until the anchor ran out of stored sound, so I began names I did not intend to use. Ultimate, the bells crashed. Final, another crash. Great and extremely, the third wave shook cracks through the glass plains. Marcus understood before the commander. He opened his arms to the army. You are witnessing the first battle in which Evan defeats a legendary weapon by almost naming things. I supplied possibilities. Turnal potato. The bells rang. Duke of the inconvenient staircase. They rang harder. Sevenfold Tuesday of mild concern. Half the soldiers stopped trying to hit me. The commander looked up. Hairline fractures covered the interruption bells. I could not distinguish conviction from intention until a technique completed, and I sincerely intended to discover whether each terrible phrase would make them ring. The final bell broke. Silence crossed the glass plains. I had one clean breath. The actual image was already waiting. A blue emperor above 10,000 thunder dragons, not enslaving them, but refusing to pay whatever impossible fee dragons demanded. The result was both majestic and petty enough to feel true. Merciful catastrophe of the Azure Emperor's 10,000 unpaid thunder dragons. Blue light covered the horizon. Dragons descended in rows, each made from branching lightning. They passed through people without harm. Every sword, bow, black thread, and piece of anchor chain became blue dust. The gray bands fell from thousands of mouths. The floating ring dropped. I caught it with one hand. The glass plains beneath the army remained unbroken, except for the cracks made by Silas's own bells. For a moment, soldiers looked around as if the battle had not happened. Then their weapons blew away. The gray commander sat down. Marcus checked his coat. You spared my buttons. They were not weapons. Some tailors disagree. I drove Stargrave through the anchor's center. The ring separated. A black beam shot south toward its twin. Silas had connected them. Destroying one began the opening sequence. Nora's signal appeared over the southern forest. A silver spear of light bent nearly in half. I crossed the distance on a wind path. The glass plains, river country, and black pines passed beneath me. I had never moved so fast. My basic magic was still growing, and confidence made even its unamplified form cleaner. The southern battle had become a crater. Stone beasts lay in pieces. Nora stood on the last one's head with her coat burned away at one shoulder. The second anchor hung above her. Captive soldiers packed the clearing. "You took long enough," she said. I crossed half the continent. You had wind. The anchor commander pulled every black thread tight. Soldiers rose around Nora like puppets. She could defeat them. She refused to. I landed beside her. "Did anyone see the northern attack?" she asked. "An army. Did you use your strongest technique?" "No," she gave the smallest irritated sigh. "We repeated the precision spell, but the southern anchor had no bells left to exhaust." It responded by pulling its captive soldiers into a living wall. I changed the image. Instead of descending from above, the thunder dragons moved along the ground as blue lines. Nora struck the anchor at the same instant, giving every thread a physical path. My technique followed her lightning. Weapons dissolved. Chains vanished. People fell safely into pine needles. The anchor split under Stargrave. Both black beams met above the eastern mountains. The sky opened. An amphitheater larger than a city appeared inside the wound. Seats curved around a darkness with no bottom. Silas stood at the center beside the complete resonance bell shard, assembled from pieces he had somehow drawn out of the broken anchors. He had wanted our power to break the seals from two directions. We had done it. Nora stared upward. Was there a way to avoid that? Probably. Would it have looked worse? Almost certainly. Then I accept the result. The first silence descended through the amphitheater. It was not a creature. It was the absence behind creatures, a black shape that made the moon look like a hole cut in paper. Wherever it passed, stars disappeared without leaving darkness, because even darkness was a named idea. The gods arrived before we could. Vera descended on a platform of floating tablets. Around her came figures of fire, stone, weather, and light. They did not attack the first silence. They attacked me. A spear made from dawn crossed the continent. Vera turned 3 tablets and deflected it into the empty northern sky. Daylight opened there. "Why are they doing that?" Marcus asked. Vera's voice reached us from miles away. "They believe his resonance opened the path." "It did," Nora said. "That does not make stabbing him useful." God wearing a ring of suns pointed down at me. "Do not permit the mortal to speak." Every divine fighter moved. I had once feared saying a spell in front of an examination audience. Now gods threw themselves across the sky whenever I inhaled. The first reached me as a blade of white fire. I said, "Crimson Sun." My shortened technique met his divine weapon. The red sphere had only 2 words, but I no longer needed a title to see the emperor behind it. It burned through the blade, the god's gauntlet, and the cloud behind him. He fell into the forest smoking. The second god formed a mountain over my head. I said, "Glacial funeral." White pillars caught it and froze it upside down. The third released a storm beast. Sovereign mantle reduced it to a silver line around my shoulders. The gods hesitated. That was new for them. I rose on a wind path toward the world amphitheater. Nora followed by throwing her spear and riding its lightning. Marcus remained on the ground for approximately 5 seconds before Vera reluctantly lifted him on a tablet. "I knew she liked me," he said. "I am preserving a witness," Vera answered. The divine army regrouped between us and the opening. Their leader gathered 6 rotating suns. I recognized the technique shape from the Harbor City Archmage, except these suns were real enough to burn countries. I drew breath. Every god attacked before I spoke. I moved behind Vera's tablets. Divine weapons struck the shield. The gods had become so frightened of a completed name that an inhale controlled them better than a spell. I inhaled again and looked left. Half the army moved left. I raised one finger toward the right. They collided in the center. Nora laughed once. "You have not chosen a technique. They do not know that." I opened my mouth. Gods shouted over one another. "Interrupt him. Seal the words. Do not let him reach dragon." I still had not decided what to say. Marcus stood on Vera's tablet, coat whipping in divine wind. "Behold, the Pantheon has discovered conversational urgency." The leader released his 6 suns. I used Crimson Sun again. One mortal red sphere passed through the center of all 6. For an instant, 7 suns aligned above the world. Then the divine ones split and burned out. The corridor to the amphitheater opened. I flew through without looking back. Behind me, the divine army stared at the red line dividing the clouds. Vera followed, perhaps because keeping me alive had become less alarming than letting her peers continue. We entered the world amphitheater. Its seats held black silhouettes shaped like forgotten gods. The floor was pale stone inscribed with every spoken technique Silas had collected. At the center, he stood inside a column of darkness. His silver mask had fused to his face. Pale lines covered his skin. "You have made noise into authority," he said. "You invited me. I invited your force. The first silence will remove the vanity attached to it. the darkness entered him. Sila's grew without changing size. That was the only way I could understand it. His outline remained human, but the space inside extended farther than the amphitheater. When he lifted one hand, the gods behind us stopped speaking. He pointed at me. Fire, he said. The word vanished. I still remembered heat and light. I remembered the red sphere, but when I tried to think the name of its element, there was an empty place. Crimson sun failed before I opened my mouth. Silas pointed again. Storm, sovereign mantle became a dark cloth without power. Dragon, thousands of images disappeared from my techniques. Thunder creatures, the crowned beast I had imagined for Nora, the final attack buried in my childhood notebooks, all lost their central shape. The first silence did not need to interrupt my names. I could delete the words that made them cool. Silas walked toward me across the names carved into the amphitheater floor. Each step erased a line. The stone did not become blank. Blank was still a description. The inscription simply stopped having ever been there, leaving smooth paths through history. The black figures in the seats leaned forward as if an absence could interest them. I tried to recall the creature at the center of my longest childhood attack. It had scales, wings, claws, and a mouth full of white light. I could describe every part. The single word that made those parts feel like one magnificent thing had vanished. Silas pointed again. Emperor. My crowned images collapsed. The red sun from my examination no longer belonged to a ruler. The blue figure above the unpaid thunder creatures lost his throne. Word disappeared so completely that I could not remember why a chair should imply authority. Sun. The round shape above my palm became a warm circle without celestial weight. Marcus inhaled sharply. Silas turned toward him. Witness. Marcus's speaking horn fell from his hand. He looked around the amphitheater, confused about why he was standing above a battle. The desire remained in his face, but the role that organized it had gone missing. Nora attacked. She crossed the arena as a silver line. Her spear reached Silas's throat before he finished turning. The point entered his fused mask and stopped against darkness. He touched the shaft. Lightning, the silver glow disappeared. Nora kept pushing with both hands. The spear was still sharp. The woman holding it was still stronger than almost any human alive. Silas backhanded her across the arena. I caught her with wind. He looked at my raised hand. Wind. The current vanished. Nora and I fell together. Vera's tablets moved beneath us before we struck the floor. He can remove one concept each time he shapes it through speech, Vera said. Do not display what you intend to use. I intend to use language. Silas faced me. I closed my mouth before he could delete that. The gods at the entrance had stopped attacking. Some tried to retreat, but the first silence covered the opening. Others attempted divine techniques without announcing them. Black tendrils reached from Silas's shadow and removed those powers as soon as they gained recognizable form. God with 6 suns raised one shaking hand. Nothing appeared. Silas had spent our previous encounters attacking my confidence. Now he had made confidence irrelevant. I could sincerely believe in a technique and still lose the pieces required to imagine it. He raised both arms. The amphitheater inscriptions lifted from the floor. Thousands of stolen attack names circled him as pale letters. I recognized fragments from the Grand Exhibition, the Imperial League, and centuries before my birth. Silas had collected every phrase so the first silence could consume them in one place. The letters turned black. Vera's tablets formed a dome. Black phrases struck them like arrows. Each impact erased a line of divine law. I can hold the structure, she said. I cannot preserve its vocabulary. Nora landed beside me with blood at one corner of her mouth. Her spear was plain silver now. Tell me what to hit. He deletes anything recognizable, then make him recognize too much. That sounded like something Marcus would suggest if he still remembered why he was here. Marcus stood on the nearest tablet, staring at his broken horn. He mouthed words experimentally. Silas had removed witness, not memory. Marcus remembered every crowd, every announcement, and every time he had climbed onto furniture. He simply could not gather them under the missing idea. He looked at me. You do things, usually. I talk while you do them, constantly, then do a larger thing. Some instincts did not require nouns. Silas sent a wave across the floor. Where it passed, color disappeared. Nora's copperhead hair turned gray. Marcus's burgundy coat lost its difference from the stone. Vera's violet eyes became clear. I struck the bell clapper against a tablet. Celestial ember released a white pulse. Color returned in a ring around us, but the black wave pressed inward. The clapper still contained heat. The word for it had not been removed. Warmth also remained. Large remained. Extremely, despite everything, remained. I could work with that. I pictured the thing I had made at 6 years old without using its lost name, a sphere above my palm. Bright enough to leave shadows inside shadows, hot enough to make the air kneel away from it. It did not need to be a miniature version of anything in the sky. It only needed to be much larger and warmer than Silas wanted. I raised my hand. Extremely large, warm thing. A gold point appeared. Silas moved. He crossed half the amphitheater in one step and struck my chest. Vera's tablet shattered behind me. The gold point remained over my palm. Large, he said. The word disappeared. My technique shrank. I added the first substitute that came to mind. Of considerable size. The point widened again. Silas struck my shoulder. I spun, caught the clapper against the floor, and kept my hand raised. Warm, he said. The technique cooled. Uncomfortably not cold, I continued. Gold light returned. The system pane flickered. Name quality, uncert. Conviction, alarmingly sincere. Silas abandoned everyone else. Every time I inhaled, he lunged. Nora intercepted his third charge with her plain spear. He caught it, but she released the weapon and drove her forehead into the cracked silver mask. The impact broke another piece away. She looked at me through colorless air. Longer, extremely considerable object of uncomfortably not cold. Silas erased object. Thing, I corrected. He erased thing. Currents. He reached for the word. Marcus threw the broken speaking horn. It struck Silas's hand before he completed the deletion. The horn bounced harmlessly away. Silas looked at him. Marcus had remembered his purpose without recovering its label. I do not know what I am, Marcus said, but apparently I object to you speaking over him. He grabbed 2 pieces of broken tablet and struck them together. The rhythm was terrible. It was also loud. Nora pulled her spear from the floor and added impacts between Marcus's beats. Metal hit stone, Marcus answered. Their pattern gave my words a path even when Silas deleted the categories around them. Vera turned the remaining tablets on edge. Their repeated impacts echoed across the arena. She would never admit to joining Marcus's accompaniment. Her timing was perfect. I rebuilt the name while Silas tore it apart. Extremely considerable occurrence of uncomfortably not cold radiance, radiance, brightness, brightness. Visible shining, he reached me. I blocked his hand with the bell clapper. Darkness cracked the white line down its center. The celestial ember flared through my arms. Silas leaned close enough that I saw his eyes behind the broken mask. They were not empty, they were furious. You reduce language to noise, he said. You are losing an argument to the word thing. I drove my forehead into his mask exactly as Nora had. Silver broke, Silas staggered. The black depth inside him opened around a human face. He looked older than I expected, not ancient or divine, just a man who had spent too long believing silence was the same as order. I remembered the original phrase, warm thing. The forbidden word was the obvious one he had already deleted. Naming its absence made the image stronger because everyone in the amphitheater could feel what should have been there. I stopped substituting. Extremely large warm thing that is definitely not the forbidden word. The system pane turned white. Name quality, ridiculous. Conviction, absolute. Multiplier, 24. A golden sphere filled the amphitheater. It had no acceptable category. It was not the lost word, because the lost word no longer existed. It was an extremely large warm thing, and the universe had no defense prepared for that. Silas wrapped himself in the first silence. The sphere struck him. His divine shell peeled apart in black layers. Each layer erased part of the golden surface, but there was always more beneath it. The attack carried him across the arena, through the column of darkness, and into the far seats. Black spectator shapes vanished in a curve around the impact. The sphere stopped 1 inch before the amphitheater wall. Silas hung at its center, outlined in gold. I closed my hand. The warm thing collapsed inward. His fused mask disintegrated. The stolen resonance bell shard flew free. Pale lines burned off his robes. The human man fell from the light and struck the floor on his knees. Sound returned to the carved names nearest him. Marcus blinked. I am a witness. Unfortunately, Nora said. He pointed at Silas. And that was the greatest use of deliberately vague language in combat history. The missing concepts began returning. Color washed over the arena. Nora's lightning crawled back along her spear. Wind moved my cape. Above us, the round celestial object remained impossible to name, but I could feel the word approaching. Silas looked down at his hands. The darkness had left him. For the first time, he seemed small inside his robes. You think you defeated silence with a joke, he said. I defeated you with one. I was only its mouth. The floor beneath him opened. The first silence rose separately. It did not have Silas's human outline now. It filled the center of the world amphitheater and continued upward beyond sight. The returning words stopped. The nearest divine fighter opened his mouth and disappeared from the sound outward. His armor fell empty. Vera's tablets closed around us. Silas gave it a point of speech, she said. Without him, it has no need to form words before erasing them. The darkness touched a tablet. Stone vanished before contact. The entity could now interrupt intent itself. I pictured the golden sphere. It failed before the image completed. I reached for ice. The thought became cold fragments and disappeared. The system pane blinked faster than I could read it, rejecting techniques that never survived long enough to receive names. Silas crawled away from the opening. The first silence ignored him. He had spent years becoming its mouth, and the moment it entered fully, it treated him as discarded punctuation. Nora stabbed her spear into the floor beside him. Close it, she said. He laughed without humor. There is no closing it. Then be useful in another way. He looked at the bell clapper in my hand. The resonance bell did not keep it asleep. The bell taught the world to remember sound after it passed. That is why it wanted the shard. The complete shard lay between us. I picked it up. It pulled toward the clapper and fused along the white crack. Black iron vibrated with every name carved in the arena. For one instant, I heard all of them. Most were awful. There were 9,000 variations of ultimate, 700 eternal blades, and one ancient technique whose title appeared to include the caster's lunch order. Bell did not judge. It preserved the act of naming. The first silence expanded. The amphitheater seats vanished row by row. Through the opening behind us, darkness spread over the continent. Cities became gray shapes. The sea stopped reflecting light. People could still run, but the sounds of their movement disappeared before reaching the air. The bell clapper rang against my shoulder. I understood the final rule. Spoken name normally created the image as I said it. Silas and the creatures exploited that delay. The first silence now erased the forming image before sound began, so the complete name had to exist inside me first. Not as a sentence waiting to be spoken, as one indivisible conviction. Then my voice would only release something already finished. I knew the attack. I had known it since the academy bell fell. Missing creature returned to my memory, wings wider than mountains, jaws closed around heaven, white and crimson power gathering between its teeth, a cannon that did not merely strike a target but removed the place where the target had been. Words arrived together, final heaven-devouring dragon god annihilation cannon. The system pane stopped flickering, technique prepared, projected force unacceptable. Even before a multiplier, the attack had become strong enough to erase a mountain. With my current conviction and the celestial ember, it could erase the continent beneath the first silence. The entity was wrapped around the world. I needed to destroy everything outside the world while leaving everything inside untouched. That required more control than lifting Harbor City without spilling the ocean, more precision than removing weapons from 2 armies, more stability than freezing the academy dungeon. The first silence moved toward me. I had seconds to build the protection before it learned the shape already inside my conviction. Nora stepped between us. Her spear looked like a needle before the darkness. She raised it anyway. How long do you need? Long enough to say the name. That is still not a duration. 5 seconds. She rolled one shoulder and set her feet. Better. Marcus retrieved the broken speaking horn. Vera gathered every remaining tablet around the amphitheater. Silas sat beside the place where his mask had fallen, staring at the thing he had invited. The first silence descended. Nora struck upward. Nora's spear entered the first silence and became a silver line without an end. She leaned into it. Her boots cut grooves through the pale floor. Lightning returned in bursts around her hands, vanished, and returned again as she forced new energy into the weapon faster than the darkness could erase it. 1, she said. The entity pressed down. Spear bent. Nora's left knee struck stone. I drove the resonance bell clapper into the amphitheater floor and reached for the frozen palace. The first silence began consuming the image. Towers lost their shape. Moonlit throne dimmed. I did not need the entire picture. I needed the result I had already achieved beneath Westbridge. Everything fragile held perfectly still, while destruction passed around it. Glacial funeral palace of the moonlit tyrant. The completed conviction escaped before the darkness found its pieces. White architecture erupted through the world amphitheater. Pillars rose around the planet below us, visible through the wound in the sky. Frozen arches crossed oceans. Clear dome curved over every city, mountain, forest, and person. It did not trap them in ice. It placed the world inside one protected interior. The outer towers shattered as soon as the first silence touched them. Inner dome held. Nora looked over one shoulder. That used your second. I know. 2. The entity folded around her spear. Silver metal turned black from the point downward. Vera sent every tablet into the darkness. They formed paths of written law, each one surviving long enough to force the entity into a defined direction. The first silence destroyed them by the hundreds. For every tablet erased, Vera's white hair loosened, and another crack spread through her court robes. 3, Nora said. The black stain reached her hands. Marcus raised the speaking horn. For once, he did not begin with a title he had invented or a claim he hoped would become true. He looked through the opening at the world under the ice palace. Millions of people could not hear him. The bell clapper could. Its restored shard carried his voice into every name it remembered. This is Evan, Marcus said, no embellishment. He failed his first fireball. He still stood beneath a falling bell when every stronger mage missed. He walked into a dungeon that ate his voice. He lifted an ocean without spilling it. He used the worst attack name in history because it was the one he believed. The broken horn amplified him until the words traveled through the ice arches. He does not need you to agree that the next name is magnificent. Marcus looked at me. But you will. The system pane became brighter than the amphitheater. Conviction stabilized. Audience dependency, none. Nora's spear broke. 4. She did not retreat. She caught the blackened blade in one hand, used the broken shaft in the other, and crossed both pieces against the descending entity. The darkness pushed her backward. Vera's final tablet split. The divine army outside the amphitheater recovered enough courage to move. Their leader raised his remaining hand. I expected him to attack the first silence. He pointed at me. Interrupt the mortal, the force he is preparing will destroy the lower world. The gods charged. Vera turned from the entity. For once, that concern is rational. Are you helping them? I am deciding. The projected force in my system pain continued rising, 26 times mountain erasure, then 30. The celestial ember inside the clapper fed the image faster than I could limit it. The frozen palace around the planet creaked. If I released the cannon directly, it would pass through the first silence and the world beneath. The protective dome might stop heat and force, but not an attack designed to erase the place a target occupied. I needed the beam to curve around the dome, strike the darkness from every direction, and never point inward. The gods reached the amphitheater. 5, Nora said. Her arms were covered in black fractures. She had given me exactly what I asked for. I lifted the bell clapper. The gods saw the movement and stopped. Not all of them. The leader continued, but the fighters behind him remembered 6 suns splitting in a line. They remembered diving at me because I inhaled. They remembered every name Silas had collected from mortals, and they felt the technique already complete inside the bell. Vera looked across her pantheon. Interrupt him, she ordered. Nobody moved. The leader looked back. He will erase us. Then you have an incentive. Still nobody moved. Nora released the broken spear and fell away from the first silence. I caught her with a strip of black wind, the restored idea answering without a spoken name. She landed beside Marcus. The entity descended into the space she had held. I began. Final, the first silence struck. The word did not build the attack. It revealed the first edge of what was already there. White light appeared behind the entity rather than in my hand. Heaven devouring, wings unfolded around the planet. They were larger than continents, crimson along the bones and white between them. The frozen palace reflected each feather without cracking. Every god lunged at once. They were too late, dragon god. The creature's head emerged above the world amphitheater. Its jaws closed around the black shape covering the moon. It had no body inside the protected world. Every scale existed outside the ice dome, exactly where the first silence had spread. The divine leader reached me. Nora caught his wrist with both hands. Marcus struck his knee with the speaking horn. Vera placed the broken edge of her last tablet against his throat. Annihilation. The dragon's mouth filled with white and crimson. The first silence tried to erase its own name. Darkness pulled inward. The entity abandoned the world, the amphitheater, and the gods. It compressed toward a point before my final word, making itself something that could not be described or targeted. The dragon's jaws began closing on empty space. The attack would release past it. I could not change the completed name without breaking conviction. I could extend it. The system pain waited on cannon. Silas lifted his head from the floor. He understood what his former master had done. It has no name now, he whispered. It has a location, not for long. The black point moved beyond the moon, then beyond the visible sky. It was fleeing into the space between meanings, dragging the final trace of silence with it. I pictured the cannon refusing to stop at one target. The dragon would swallow the escape path, the hiding place, and every excuse the darkness made for itself. It would continue until the universe had nowhere left to put an unnamed absence. The extra phrase arrived with such clarity that I almost laughed. Canon of the absolutely inescapable, unreasonably persistent, extremely personal grudge edition. System pain shook, subtitle accepted, name quality, irresponsible, conviction, absolute, multiplier, 33. I said the final word. Cannon, the attack had already appeared behind me. Sound reached the gods after white light crossed the sky. They threw themselves toward my mouth while the dragon opened its own. Crimson rings formed from the amphitheater to the edge of the world. Each ring turned the beam away from the frozen palace and into the black point's path. First silence fled, the beam followed. It curved around the planet once, then twice. White and crimson streams crossed over the oceans like the bands of a celestial cage. They touched no land. They disturbed no cloud except one above Westbridge, which twisted into the shape of a question mark. The black point moved beyond the sky. The dragon became larger. Its wings filled the space between stars. Its jaws reached around the place where the point intended to go. The subtitle was ridiculous enough to make pursuit part of the attack's identity. It did not need to find the first silence. Inescapability meant every route ended inside its mouth. The entity turned back. For the first time, the absence looked afraid. It rushed toward the protected world, hoping I would cancel the attack rather than let it return. I kept my hand raised. Nora watched the black point fall toward us. You are not stopping it. No, good. The first silence struck the ice dome. Glacial towers cracked across every continent. The entity spread itself thin, trying to enter through millions of fractures at once. The dragon beam reached it from behind. White light filled the cracks. The frozen palace became a mold. Forced the attack to take the exact shape of the world's exterior. Every fragment of silence was trapped between protection inside and annihilation outside. The dragon closed its jaws. Nothing exploded. An outline appeared around the planet, thin as a drawn circle. The darkness beyond it disappeared. Stars returned one by one. The moon emerged whole. Then sound arrived. The resonance bell rang from the clapper in my hand. Its note crossed the ice palace. Every stolen word followed it home. Wind moved over the glass plains. Waves struck Harbor City's walls. Westbridge's alarm completed the note it had begun during the siege. Millions of voices returned in the middle of whatever they had been trying to say. The world amphitheater shook. Its black seats became ordinary stone. The opening beneath Seela's closed. The divine fighters fell out of the air as their suppressed weight remembered them. The enormous dragon remained above us for one final second. Its head turned. One white eye looked directly at me, as if the image I had believed since childhood wanted to confirm I had finally said its whole name. Then it dissolved into red gold dust. The system pane displayed a number I could not immediately process. Final multiplier, 33. Collateral damage, 1 cloud. I lowered my hand. My repaired cape settled around me. The silver seam had not torn. Nobody spoke. The gods were capable of speech again. They simply had nothing prepared. Marcus climbed onto the nearest surviving block. His coat was burned, his horn was broken, and half his hair stood upward from divine energy. I would like the record to show, he announced, that I introduced him. The amphitheater laughed, not the shame choir's forced cruelty, real laughter, exhausted and disbelieving. It came from mortal fighters, divine survivors, and eventually Nora, who sat on the floor holding the 2 pieces of her spear. Vera did not laugh. She stared at the question mark cloud over Westbridge. You damaged the sky, 1 cloud. It is shaped like punctuation. That may be Marcus's fault. I accept full credit, Marcus said. Silas remained on his knees. The first silence had taken every pale line from his robes. Without the mask, he looked like a tired man in torn black cloth. He touched his throat and tried to summon gray silence. Nothing happened. You left me alive, he said. You were inside the palace. Was that mercy? It was efficient. Protecting everything required fewer decisions. He looked more offended by my indifference than he had by the golden sphere. Nora stood. She fitted the broken halves of her spear together, though no magic joined them. Was that your strongest technique, so far? You did not aim it at me. You were helping. The tournament final remains unresolved. The world had almost stopped existing. A pantheon was still scattered around us. She had 1 sleeve, a broken spear, and black fractures fading from both arms. She wanted to schedule a rematch. Next month, I said. Tomorrow. 2 weeks. 3 days. 1 week. She held out a hand. I took it. 1 week, she said. Complete attack. Not that one. I assumed the arena is too small. Vera walked toward the divine leader. He had recovered enough dignity to stand. Mortal will submit his technique for celestial restriction, he said. I turned my head. Every god within hearing distance stepped backward. The leader cleared his throat, at a mutually acceptable time. Better, Vera said. She gathered the fragments of her tablets. New writing appeared across them, recording the final attack name. The text extended over 7 stones because Marcus insisted the subtitle was official. World Amphitheater began descending toward the eastern mountains. With the first silence gone, it had become a large piece of architecture with no reason to remain in the sky. Vera created a platform beneath us. The court will return this structure to an uninhabited valley, she said. Can Westbridge have it? Marcus asked. No, the Imperial League needs a larger final arena. No, could we rent? Vera dropped his end of the platform 6 inches. He became quiet for almost a minute. As we descended, the world reacted. The northern and southern armies saw their weapons return as harmless piles of dust and began shouting questions at one another. Harbor City rang every bell it had, including several that had been decorative until that moment. The capital's tournament crowd remained in the crater, watching the sky with their mouths open. At Westbridge, students climbed onto the academy roof beneath a question mark cloud and argued about whether I had placed it intentionally. The resonance bell clapper vibrated against my back. Its shard was complete, but the bell itself still waited in the underground chamber. The object wanted to go home, so did I. The divine platform reached the academy at sunset. Every roof, courtyard, and broken wall was crowded. I had imagined returning through silence. Perhaps 5 people would meet us. I would hand over the clapper, find dinner, and sleep for 2 days. Marcus had other expectations. He stepped to the platform's edge and raised the broken horn. The crowd already knew. They shouted the final attack name, not correctly. No group that large could maintain the same pace through that many words. The east courtyard reached annihilation, while the west wall was still arguing about heaven devouring. Someone added super extra. A group of first years replaced personal grudge addition with very serious anger version. The result was a complete disaster. I stood at the center of it with Nora on one side, Vera on the other, and a powerless enemy seated under divine guard behind us. The first fireball target had been placed near the courtyard as a joke. Straw chest still carried a painted coin-sized burn. I looked at the thousands of people trying to say my ridiculous attack name. Embarrassment detected, the system reported. It paused. Embarrassment source, their pronunciation. Multiplier unaffected. I laughed. Laughing in front of Westbridge turned out to be a tactical error. Marcus interpreted it as permission to begin a celebration. Within 10 minutes, the dining hall tables had been carried into the courtyard. Within 20, someone found the tournament trophy that Marcus had accidentally received and filled it with punch. By midnight, 6 different groups had written songs about the final attack. None agreed on the melody, the multiplier, or whether the extremely personal grudge was mine or the dragon's. I tried to reach my old basement room. People blocked every corridor. First years wanted me to sign spellbooks. Professors wanted a description of the first silence that did not contain the phrase extremely large warm thing. Visiting champions wanted to compare ranks. A group from Harbor City had brought a decorative bell and asked me to lift the bay again so they could paint it from a better angle. The headmaster rescued me by announcing that the resonance bell required immediate restoration. I followed him underground before the sentence ended. Nora came with me. Her arms had returned to their normal color, but thin black marks remained around the wrists. She carried the broken spear pieces wrapped across her back. Marcus attempted to follow until the headmaster assigned him to keep the courtyard from entering the dungeon as a parade. He accepted the responsibility with alarming enthusiasm. The lower library had been rebuilt around the frozen remains of Silas's guardian. My glacial funeral palace had melted after the siege, but the giant creature remained trapped in a block of clear ice. Students had placed a small sign beside it. Please do not feed the silence. Good policy, I said. Nora tapped the ice. It is alive. One black ring opened beneath the frost. The creature had lost its connection to the first silence. It could no longer swallow sound, but it still had teeth. Headmaster promised to move the warning farther away. We entered the bell chamber. The great bronze body hung over repaired stone. A missing wedge scarred its rim. For weeks, every academy barrier had been powered by temporary crystals. They flickered with exhaustion along the walls. The clapper pulled against the strap on my back. I set it beneath the bell. The restored shard separated from the white line, rose through the chamber, and fitted itself into the missing wedge. Bronze flowed around it. The celestial ember remained inside the black iron, turning its center white. The clapper lifted from my hands. It hung beneath the bell exactly where Silas had taken it. The headmaster looked at me. It appears complete. Then ring it. It answered you. Nora stood beside the rope. If he rings it, will the entire academy become a frozen palace? Only if I name the ringing. Headmaster moved away from the rope anyway. I pulled. The bell sounded once. Its note moved through Westbridge's foundations. Cracks in the lower library closed. The temporary barrier crystals went dark as bronze light replaced them. Across the academy, every door, window, and tower hummed. The note continued beyond hearing. I felt it pass through the glass plains, Harbor City, the capital, and the eastern mountains. Places the first silence had touched answered with ordinary noise. People remembered interrupted conversations. Musicians recovered lost measures. Children rediscovered words that had vanished before anyone noticed. The bell also carried something back. Names. Thousands of them reached the chamber in overlapping whispers. People had named the question mark Cloud, the celestial dragon, the day sound returned, and me, burning emperor, loudest librarian, final canon mage, the guy with the thing. Most of the titles had no effect. One made the system pain flash, heaven's most unnecessarily specific problem, personal conviction higher than expected, public title bonus, unavailable. I decided not to tell Marcus. The bell's note ended. The chamber remained warm. Headmaster touched the restored bronze. Westbridge will hold. That was the closest he came to a speech. He had spent the siege carrying wounded students through silent halls. He did not need to explain what the sound meant. Nora pulled the rope a second time. The bell nearly threw us off our feet. Testing, she said. On the way up, Vera waited in the lower library. She had changed from damaged court robes into a simpler white coat with black edges, but stone tablets still floated behind her. The divine leader had left Westbridge after discovering that every student who saw him asked whether Evan had defeated him. Vera stayed because the celestial ember remained in the clapper, and because, in her words, somebody needed to prevent Marcus from establishing diplomatic relations with heaven. The court has classified your final technique, she told me. As what? A prohibited celestial scale utterance. Reasonable. A catastrophic image manifestation. Also reasonable. And an offense against concise naming. There it is. She handed me a tablet. The full attack name covered both sides in narrow writing. At the bottom, divine law prohibited its use inside any atmosphere, within 3 lunar distances of an inhabited world, or during a formal celestial proceeding. Does this include the subtitle? I asked. Your companion insisted. Then the legal name is accurate. You are not concerned. I was not planning to use it in a meeting. Nora read over my shoulder. The rematch is inside an atmosphere. Different technique, complete technique. We agreed. Vera's tablets shifted toward Nora. You stood in direct contact with the first silence. The remaining fractures may react to amplified magic. Nora examined the black lines around her wrists. Will they make me weaker? Possibly. Will they make the fight dangerous? Certainly. Then they are acceptable. Vera looked at me as if Nora were my responsibility. I stepped away. Silas was held in the old spellbook basement. No prison in Westbridge had been designed for him because Westbridge did not have a prison. The basement had one door, no windows, and enough anti-magic ink to suppress an ordinary archmage. Silas was no longer an ordinary archmage. He was less. I visited the next morning. He sat at my former desk under a lamp I had repaired 3 times. Without the silver mask and pale lines, nobody would have recognized him as the man who silenced cities. Someone had given him a gray academy shirt. He seemed offended by its softness. They asked whether I wanted breakfast, he said. Did you? That is not the point. Then no, I took the opposite chair. Shelves surrounded us with handwritten spellbooks. Their authors had named every technique. Silas looked trapped by the words more than the walls. The first silence is gone, I said. For now. You said it existed before named things. Do you think one attack can remove what existed before attack? It had a 33 multiplier. He stared at me. What? Nothing. I had come to discover whether fragments remained. The restored bell heard no voids. Vera's court found no missing concepts. Silas had spent longer touching the entity than anyone alive, and the black marks in Nora's arms worried her despite what she said. Silas leaned back. You want certainty? I want to know whether she will vanish in the middle of our rematch. Your priorities remain diseased. She would be furious. The fractures are scars. They will absorb silence, not spread it. Your rival will be able to pass through quiet fields that would stop others. That sounded like a future advantage Nora would enjoy too much. And you? I asked. I have nothing. He spoke the truth. No gray field formed. The room did not become colder. He could not even silence the lamp's buzz. You built everything around being the mouth of something that discarded you. Have you come to explain irony? Marcus offered. I prevented it. Silas looked genuinely grateful for the first time. I stood. The Academy has not decided what to do with you. Will you? No, why not? You are no longer interesting enough to decide. I left him surrounded by beginner spellbooks. That answer traveled through the Academy and improved my reputation more than the final canon. By afternoon, people claimed I had defeated Silas twice, once with cosmic force and once by becoming bored. Marcus began selling small silver masks with cracks painted across them. The headmaster confiscated the first box. Marcus produced a second from somewhere beneath his coat. I attempted to sleep. The world sent invitations. Harbor City wanted me to open next year's exhibition by raising the ocean. The Imperial League wanted to complete the tournament final in its rebuilt crater. Northern Army wanted a demonstration of the weapon dissolving dragons. 3 academies offered me teaching positions. A village I had never visited asked me to name its bridge because they believed anything I named would become invincible. God sent no invitation. They sent a notice that the Court of Measured Heaven was temporarily closed for repairs. Marcus read each message aloud in the dining hall. He had replaced his broken horn with a larger gold one. You cannot accept all of them, Nora said. I can accept the ones with crowds. I was speaking to Evan. I pushed the pile away. I have a rematch. The dining hall became quiet. Nora's expression did not change, but silver light ran once around the broken spear on her back. Marcus slowly stood. Public, no. Counterproposal, yes. West practice ring. Counterproposal, Imperial League crater with 40,000. Nora pointed one finger at him. Spark destroyed the gold horn's mouthpiece. He sat. We trained separately for the rest of the week. I needed a complete attack strong enough to satisfy Nora without destroying the academy. That was harder than defeating the first silence. World-scale danger permitted world-scale force. A duel required restraint, and the system rewarded whatever image I sincerely considered greatest. My first idea involved a crowned thunder creature. Forbidden celestial notice did not apply, but the technique would still remove half the west tower. My second idea was Stargrave. Too fast. Nora had helped create it and knew the path. The Pebble technique had perfect control. She would never forgive me. Marcus suggested 12-fold spear-breaking conclusion of the rival who scheduled her own defeat. The system gave it a multiplier of 2. You liked part of it, he said. The scheduled defeat. Excellent foundation. I practiced in the examination arena at night. The repaired target stood 30 feet away. I created small spells with huge names and huge spells with short names, learning exactly where conviction became force and where control could bend it. On the third night, Vera appeared in the upper seats. You are suppressing the image before it forms, she said. I am preventing collateral damage. You are imagining a smaller victory. That is the objective. No, the objective is to display complete superiority inside a boundary. She had learned an unfortunate amount from watching me. I stopped trying to reduce the attack. Instead, I pictured an enormous technique that chose to fit, a throne room made from midnight clouds. 1,000 rulers of thunder seated in the stands. At the center, a silver spear challenged them. Rather than destroy it, the rulers would lower their weapons in acknowledgement. The power would end the duel by making every possible attack kneel. The image preserved Nora's dignity and made my victory absolute. The name came easily. I did not say it. Vera raised one eyebrow. Well, the rematch is in 4 days. You are cultivating anticipation. No, your companion's influence is visible. She left before I could deny it. On the morning of the rematch, I reached the West practice ring and found 40,000 people. The Imperial League crater had not moved to Westbridge. People they filled temporary stands beyond the academy walls. Spell screens floated above every tower. Harbor City had sent 3 ships. The northern and southern armies occupied opposite hills. Gods watched through openings in the clouds while pretending the openings were natural. Marcus stood on an announcer platform wearing a new burgundy coat. You said no public audience. I agreed. There are 40,000 people. I did not invite a public audience. I announced the time and location. Their decision to arrive reflects personal initiative. Nora waited in the ring. Her spear had been reforged. The 2 broken pieces were joined by a black section formed from her first silent scars. Silver lightning entered the dark metal and emerged sharper. Did you know? I asked. Yes, you allowed this. I want witnesses when you lose. The system pane opened. Embarrassment, none. Anticipation multiplier, pending. I looked at Marcus. He looked away. Nora lowered the spear. The rematch began. Nora disappeared from the center of the ring. The sound arrived later. Her reforged spear struck my bell clapper barrier with enough force to bend the West practice ring into a shallow bowl. Silver energy entered the black section of her weapon and vanished. The silent scars absorbed every crack of thunder. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the stolen sound emerged from the spearhead directly behind me. I moved before the blast. Blue-white force erased my afterimage and carved a line through the academy barrier. The resonance bell answered underground. Bronze light closed the line before it reached the temporary stands. Nora turned the spear in one hand. It works, she said. You could have tested that elsewhere. I did. That worried me more. Marcus's voice boomed over the ring. Nora has converted contact with a world-ending absence into an improvement. This is why ordinary safety advice has never interested her. She threw the spear at his platform. It stopped 1 inch from the gold horn, reversed, and returned to her hand. The black section had swallowed the distance between those points. Nora could now call the spear through a moment of silence and make it emerge wherever its last sound had gone. The audience understood the danger. The gods in the clouds leaned closer. Nora attacked from 4 directions. Each thrust entered a black seam and emerged from another. I caught the first with wind, froze the second path, and let Sovereign Mantle absorb the third. The fourth cut through my repaired cape at the same silver seam she had pinned during our first duel. The cloth opened behind me. 40,000 people made the same noise. Nora smiled. That is familiar. I held the cape closed with 2 fingers. The system pane displayed, callback quality, excellent, anticipation multiplier, increasing. Marcus had somehow created a new problem. The crowd expected the old halo. If I repeated it exactly, Nora knew the result. If I avoided it, the anticipation would sour. I raised my free hand. Sovereign Mantle of the 1,000 Screaming Storm Kings. Black wind unfolded. Nora's silver paths struck it and braided themselves into a halo above me, just as they had during our first duel. The audience began cheering before the technique finished. Nora did not push against the barrier this time. She entered it. Her black spear section absorbed the silence between each captured bolt. She moved through the halo like a person stepping between doorways. Every silver current I had controlled became an entrance around my body. The spearhead touched my throat. Expected, she said. She thrust. I released the entire mantle upward. The halo became a black column, carrying Nora and her spear into the sky. She twisted in midair, planted her feet on nothing, and compressed all the stolen thunder beneath one boot. The sky cracked. She descended inside a silver spear large enough to divide Westbridge. The academy barrier rose. Professors added layers. Harbor City's ships moved backward. Marcus stayed on his platform, although his new coat lifted straight above his head. I could answer with Crimson Sun. Nora had seen it break divine power. I chose the plain spell everyone had mocked. Fireball. An orange sphere hovered over my palm. No multiplier. Nora's descending spear hit it. The orange sphere did not overpower her. It moved. Years of amplified casting had refined my control until the simplest spell could orbit the spearhead at exactly the speed of her descent. It pulled the lightning sideways 1 degree at a time. Nora crossed the final 100 feet inside a curve she could not feel. Her attack struck the ring beside me. The entire silver spear plunged underground. I remained standing with the fireball above 1 finger. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then a vertical column of lightning erupted from the empty field outside the academy, precisely where my curve had aimed it. Clouds separated. The ground inside the ring remained untouched. First-year section stared at the orange sphere. It was still only a fireball. Nora rose from the crater beside me. Dust covered her face. Her amber eyes followed the spell. You redirected my full attack with that. It has improved. Give it a ridiculous name. No, she swept my legs. I jumped. Her spear emerged from a black seam above me. I formed an ice platform, kicked away, and crossed the ring before it landed. Nora followed through the seam, faster than ordinary movement. I used 3 plain wind bursts to change direction. She anticipated the 4th and struck my shoulder with the spear shaft. My coat tore. The audience cheered her. Nora had not arrived to serve as the final person I impressed. She wanted the victory. Every improvement I displayed made her fight harder. She placed the spear upright. Black silence spread from the center section. It covered the ring, stopped at the academy barrier, and turned the air transparent. Inside it, sound vanished. She had created a controlled fragment of the field that once made my resonance useless. And she entered it with me, no spoken names, no Marcus, no audience noise, only movement. Nora attacked without lightning. Her spear split the air. I used the black clapper as a staff. Iron met silver. We crossed the ring in silent exchanges too fast for the spell screens to follow. She cut my sleeve. I struck the spear aside. She caught the clapper's strap, pulled me forward, and drove a knee toward my chest. I turned the pull into a throw. Nora flipped over my shoulder and landed on her feet. We had both spent our early years learning ordinary combat because our best powers failed in specific ways. Her lightning sometimes moved too violently for close allies. My voice sometimes refused to exist. The difference was that she enjoyed every second of the solution. She attacked again. I let the spear pass my side and trapped its black section between my palms. The silent scars pulled at the magic in my arms. I held on. Nora released the shaft, stepped inside my reach, and punched me in the jaw. I stumbled. She caught the spear before it fell and placed the point against my chest. System pain remained visible inside the silence. Immediate defeat probability, high. Suggested action, speak. Unhelpful. Nora pushed. The spear entered my coat. I pictured the completed throne room. It did not require sound to form now. Final battle had taught me to create the whole name in conviction first. The system could prepare it, but the technique would not release until I spoke. I needed sound. The resonance bell waited beneath Westbridge. I struck the black clapper against Nora's spear. Bronze answered underground. One note entered the silence field. Nora's eyes widened. I had one breath. Midnight throne assembly of the 1,000 Thunder Kings who lower their weapons only once. The practice ring became a throne room. Dark clouds formed walls that fit exactly inside the barrier. 1,000 towering figures appeared in tiered seats, each carrying a silver weapon across his knees. Their crowns were made from quiet blue light. At the center, Nora stood with her spear pressed to my chest. Name quality, exceptional. Conviction, absolute. Anticipation multiplier, 8. Base resonance multiplier, 21. Combined multiplier limited by boundary control, 24. The figures rose. Nora pulled her spear free and turned toward them. Every Thunder King aimed at her. Silver power gathered from all sides. She lowered her stance. Complete attack, she said. You asked for it. The 1,000 rulers released their weapons. Nora became a point inside a silver universe. She struck upward. Her black spear swallowed the first wave sound and redirected it into the second. 200 weapons collided. She turned, cut through a third wave, and rode its lightning across the throne room. More attacks converged. Each time her scars absorbed silence, the reforged section glowed darker. She reached the first throne. Her spear split it. The audience outside could see every movement through the cloud walls. They could not hear anything. Marcus's mouth opened and closed against the barrier. Nora crossed 10 thrones, then 50. The 1,000 rulers adjusted. Their weapons stopped arriving as separate attacks. They formed one silver ceiling and lowered it. Nora planted the spear overhead. The black section cracked. She remained standing. The ceiling lowered another foot. Her knees bent, but her eyes stayed on me. I closed one hand. Every Thunder King stepped down from his throne. Nora prepared for the final strike. He did not attack. One by one, the rulers lowered their weapons in acknowledgement. The silver ceiling folded around Nora without touching her. It became a cage of kneeling spears. Her own weapon was the last still raised. The technique's purpose was not destruction. It was to make every possible attack admit the duel was over. The black section of Nora's spear absorbed the silent command. Cracks spread from its center to both silver ends. She could keep pushing and break the weapon again. She looked around at 1,000 bowed rulers. Then she lowered her spear. The throne room vanished. Sound returned. 40,000 people had enough time to inhale together. Nora stood one step from me. The point of her spear touched the ground. My fireball still hovered outside the ring where I had left it. Marcus raised both arms. Nora concedes. I lowered my weapon, she said. That is what conceding looks like. I was acknowledging the technique. That is what conceding with excellent posture looks like. She threw the spear. Marcus ducked. Goldhorn vanished from his platform and appeared in Nora's free hand. She crushed the mouthpiece. The crowd finally erupted. Westbridge's barrier trembled from the noise. Harbor City's ships fired colored spells. Northern and Southern armies raised their empty hands because I had destroyed all their ceremonial weapons. In the clouds, gods attempted to look unimpressed and failed. Nora returned the spear to her back. You won, she said quietly enough that only I heard. I know, do not make that expression. What expression? The one where you pretend you expected 24. I had expected 12. Boundary control limited it. So you were holding back. The academy is behind you. Next time we choose an uninhabited continent. There are no uninhabited continents. Vera can find one. The god in question descended into the ring. I heard that, she said. Nora looked at her. Good. Vera inspected the untouched boundary. The ring's painted line remained. Not one temporary stand had moved. The only structural damage came from Nora's first attack in Marcus's platform, which had collapsed when he tried to climb higher. Complete superiority inside a boundary, Vera said. Your advice was useful. Do not repeat that publicly. 40,000 witnesses had already heard through the spell screens. Marcus emerged from his broken platform. Too late. By evening, the rematch had acquired 7 names. Most called it the Kneeling Thunder Duel. Imperial League declared Nora and me joint champions, then reversed the decision after Nora threatened to destroy the trophy. Marcus kept it. The Divine Court updated my classification. Final heaven-devouring dragon god annihilation canon remained prohibited. Midnight Throne Assembly received approval for continental use under supervision. Fireball received a warning. Apparently redirecting Nora's full attack with an unamplified beginner spell had frightened the gods more than the throne room. I framed that notice. The framed warning lasted on my wall for 2 days. Marcus borrowed it for an exhibition and returned a larger copy with gold lettering. The original reappeared above the dining hall doors beside a sign that said Basic Spell Safety. First years began pointing at it whenever a professor told them not to underestimate fundamentals. The faculty blamed me. They also offered me a position. Headmaster found me in the lower library, where I had resumed repairing spellbooks because paper did not ask for demonstrations. He placed a silver guest instructor clasp on the desk. I am still enrolled, I said. Technically, I missed most of the final term. You completed practical requirements. By what standard? He glanced at the frozen dungeon guardian. The creature opened one black-ringed eye in the ice. Fine, I said. My first class was introductory verbal casting. The academy assigned the West Lecture Hall. 600 people entered a room designed for 80. Half were not students. A Harbor City Archmage sat in the back wearing a first-year ribbon. 2 Imperial League champions hid badly behind textbooks. 3 gods watched through the windows and vanished whenever I looked directly at them. Marcus had written my name across the board in letters taller than I was. Under it, he added, creator of the extremely large warm thing. I erased the second line. He wrote it again while I faced the class. Verbal casting does not require a long name, I began. 600 quills moved. It does not require shouting. The quills moved again. It does not require an emperor, a calamity, or an unpaid creature. A first year raised his hand. How many unpaid creatures are allowed? None are required, but allowed. This class was a mistake. The students leaned closer. I intended to teach one useful principle. A name should hold a clear image. Most mages treated incantations as fixed labels. They memorized words without seeing the result. I placed 80 candles around the room and asked each student to light one with the simplest possible phrase. Some said flame, some said candlelight. One boy shouted infernal judgment of the breakfast table and ignited his sleeve. I put him out with a plain water spell. The name is not decoration, I said. If the image is confused, the spell is confused. Harbor City Archmage raised his hand. What if the image contains 6 city-destroying spheres? Then ask why. To establish scale, use one larger sphere. He wrote that down. The class should have remained small. Marcus opened the doors. People crowded the corridor. My voice carried through crystals to the courtyard. By the second exercise, half of Westbridge was trying to rename Fireball. The results were terrible. Scarlet Comet produced speed without heat. Devouring Ember ate the student's glove. Furious Orange created an orange that screamed. I stopped the exercise when someone formed a tiny emperor who demanded a chair. I placed the original practice dummy at the front. Its painted coin-sized burn remained over the heart. This is what my fireball did during the final examination. The room waited for a reveal. That is all, someone laughed, then stopped because nobody joined. A system multiplied my spells when I gave them names I sincerely considered dramatic. The first attempt had no bonus. It was weak. Floating Pain appeared beside me. Only I could see its text, but I knew it was listening. I did not become strong because every phrase was impressive. I became strong enough that even the plain spell improved. Name shows the image. It does not replace the spell beneath it. I raised one hand. Fireball. The orange sphere crossed the room. It touched the painted burn and vanished. The dummy remained standing. The wall behind it opened. A circular tunnel extended through 12 reinforced practice barriers, the West Tower and the clouds beyond. The edges were perfectly smooth. No heat touched the straw. The class stared through the hole at blue sky. I had intended to stop at the first barrier. Basic fireball output, still adjusting after final resonance event. Vera appeared in the doorway. The warning was insufficient. I can repair it. You said that about the sky. First years began cheering. I lowered my hand. Class dismissed. Nobody moved. Marcus stepped beside the tunnel. For the next lesson, Evan will demonstrate. I used wind to remove him from the room. Teaching became harder after that. Students believed every accident was part of an advanced demonstration. When I tripped over a stack of books, rumors said gravity had submitted to me. When I arrived late, Marcus explained that I had been waiting for the correct dramatic timing. When I drank tea during a barrier exercise, the entire class assumed the cup was a legendary artifact. Nora attended once. She sat in the first row with her spear across her knees. Every student cast perfectly. Nobody volunteered. A first year asked whether she would demonstrate silence field combat. Nora placed the black spear section against the floor. The lecture hall lost sound. She pointed at me. Students understood the lesson immediately. If a spell depended on a name, learn what remained when the voice was gone. I fought her for 4 minutes with chalk. The chalk pieces became wind-guided projectiles. Nora cut them in half. I froze the dust into a white screen. She stepped through the silent seam. I caught her spear between 2 textbooks and pushed her out of the marked teaching square. Sound returned. The class stood on their seats. He used educational materials. Marcus shouted from the corridor. Nora looked down at the line. You moved the square. Wind. That is dishonest. The objective was to remain inside it. You did not. She considered breaking the floor, then nodded once. The students learned more from that exchange than from my entire prepared lecture. Vera began teaching a weekly class on concise casting. Her first lesson lasted 7 minutes. She spoke 12 words, split the clouds with 1 gesture, and dismissed everyone. Her second lesson drew twice as many students. Marcus offered a course called Applied Narration and Battlefield Audience Acquisition. Faculty rejected it. He taught it unofficially in the dining hall and gained more students than Vera and me combined. Silas could hear all 3 classes from the basement. His confinement changed after the restored bell confirmed he had no power. He was allowed into the lower library under supervision to repair the books damaged by his guardian. This punishment had not been chosen for symbolism. Westbridge needed the work. He treated it as symbolism anyway. "They make me copy incantations," he said when I passed his table. "Your handwriting is good. There are 32 pages devoted to names for a shield. That shelf is outdated. One is called the Impenetrable Breakfast Plate." Marcus donated that volume. Silas closed his eyes. Powerlessness did not improve his personality. It made him quieter in an ordinary way. Students stopped fearing him after a first year asked for help spelling annihilation, and he corrected her automatically. I did not forgive him. He did not ask. He copied books. The academy used the labor. That was enough. News from the rest of the world arrived daily. Harbor City rebuilt the sunken, quiet cathedral as an underwater museum. Glass planes kept the rows of arrows my sovereign mantle had planted and placed lanterns around them. The capital completed the Imperial League crater and installed a sign forbidding subterranean choirs. 2 armies renamed the day. Their weapons vanished. Peaceful catastrophe, although nothing about the event had been peaceful from my position. Every region exaggerated a different part of the story. In the north, I had walked through an army without blinking. In Harbor City, I rode the ocean. At the capital, I defeated the Sky Serpent while everyone laughed. Westbridge students insisted the ultimate attack was less important than the first bell because they had witnessed that one personally. God spread the strangest rumor. According to divine messengers, I had forced the entire pantheon to kneel before speaking a forbidden name. That did not happen, I told Vera. Correct. You can fix it. I could, she continued reading. You are not going to. The rumor has improved compliance at celestial proceedings. I began to understand Marcus. 1 month after the final battle, the question mark cloud remained over Westbridge. Weather moved around it. Wind did not change it. Rain passed through and fell in the shape of punctuation. Vera examined it and declared it harmless residue from the cannon's boundary correction. Marcus sold umbrellas shaped like question marks. I climbed the west tower one night to inspect it alone. The academy below was quiet, not Silas's empty silence. Ordinary night sounds crossed the roofs, pages turning in dormitories, Nora striking practice targets, Marcus arguing with someone about merchandise, the restored bell humming beneath stone. I had once wanted a life where nobody asked me to raise my voice. Now the continent recognized my inhale. The difference should have bothered me more. I stood beneath the cloud and tried a new name in a whisper. Quiet evening of the mage who has definitely finished working. System pain appeared. Name quality, desperate. Conviction, low. Multiplier, 1. At least some things remained reliable. The question mark cloud flashed, not with lightning, with violet symbols arranged in a circle. It did not belong to Vera's tablets, Westbridge, or any spell tradition I knew. The cloud opened like an eye. Something on the other side looked down. It was far beyond the stars, but its attention carried weight. The tower stones groaned. Every academy barrier rose at once. The resonance bell rang without anyone pulling its rope. Vera appeared beside me in white light. Nora landed on the roof through a black seam. Marcus climbed the stairs 30 seconds later carrying 3 horns. Did I miss the entrance? The violet circle released a single black envelope. It floated into my hand. No one touched it. Words burned across the front in silver. To the mortal with the unnecessarily long attack names. Nora read over my shoulder. Open it. Vera's tablets formed a shield. Do not. Marcus selected his largest horn. Open it slowly. I broke the seal. The envelope contained a challenge and an insult. The challenge was written in silver lines that moved when the paper tilted. The mortal who discharged a Class 9 image weapon through the outer dark. Your attack crossed 7 recognized celestial territories. Interrupted. Coronation erased an unclaimed moonlet and frightened the oldest beast in the hollow constellation into surrendering before it was attacked. You are summoned to the Grand Assembly beyond heaven to answer one question. Was that your longest technique name? The insult came below it. If yes, the outer realms are disappointed. Marcus read the final line twice. They are challenging your naming ability, I noticed. Not your power, not your control, your naming ability. Nora looked through the violet opening. Where are they? Vera's expression had become more severe than usual. Beyond my court, the outer realms consider planetary gods local functionaries. Marcus lowered his horn. You are a local functionary. One tablet moved toward his forehead. He stepped behind me. The silver lines continued. The assembly would open in 90 days. I could attend, refuse, or send a technique name as my answer. If I attended, one representative from each outer territory would attempt to interrupt me before completion. If I finished, they would judge the result. If I failed, they would add my world to something called the Quiet Provinces. That sounds familiar, I said. It is not the first silence, Vera replied. The outer realms value noise, excessively. What are the Quiet Provinces? Places considered insufficiently entertaining. Marcus looked offended on behalf of the entire planet. At the bottom of the letter, a final note burned brighter. Opening demonstration required immediately. The violet circle widened. Pressure descended over Westbridge. Towers bent outward. Every flame on campus stretched toward the cloud. The resonance bell rang again, but its barrier folded lower with each note. Something was coming through. Demonstration of what? Nora asked. The answer arrived as a hand. It was made from violet light and large enough to cover the academy. 5 fingers reached through the cloud, each carrying a ring of unfamiliar stars. The palm opened above us. A silver symbol formed at its center. Vera read it. Impact. The hand fell. Westbridge's barriers shattered one layer at a time. Students poured from dormitories. Professors raised shields. Marcus turned toward the courtyard and lifted all 3 horns as if simultaneous narration would improve structural integrity. I stepped onto the tower rail. The final cannon was prohibited and unnecessary. The hand was not a world-ending entity. It was a greeting from someone whose etiquette involved flattening academies. Nora joined me. Mine, she said. The letter was addressed to me. The hand entered my atmosphere. Vera formed tablets around the tower. The opening demonstration tests whether the recipient's world can endure the assembly's attention. Can it? Marcus asked. Not currently. The hand struck the outer barrier. Bronze light cracked across the sky. Nora threw her spear. The black section opened a seam through the palm. Silver lightning entered one star ring and burst from another. The giant hand twisted but continued downward. I used Sovereign Mantle. Black wind spread above Westbridge. It caught one finger. The remaining 4 pushed through. Crimson sun struck the thumb and turned violet light red. Hand absorbed it. This was not a stronger enemy than the first silence. It was a different problem. The hand had no mind nearby to panic, no body to defeat, and no interest in my reputation. It was a remote amount of force sent to see what happened. I could answer with an equally remote amount of force. The fireball warning hung in the dining hall. I raised one finger. Fireball, the orange sphere formed. Marcus lowered one horn. Are you naming it? No. The insult specifically concerns names. This is the opening demonstration. First impressions matter. The hand crossed the final barrier. Its palm shadow covered every Westbridge tower. I released the fireball. It traveled upward, shrinking against the violet palm until it looked like a spark. The silver impact symbol met it. The hand stopped. Fireball did not burn it. I rotated the sphere against the center of pressure, the same way I had redirected Nora's descending spear. The enormous palm turned 1 degree, then another. Fingers slid past Westbridge. The hand struck the empty field north of the academy. The continent moved. A violet print appeared across 3 valleys. Wind threw trees into the air. Westbridge remained inside the narrow, untouched space beside the thumb. Fireball hovered over my finger again. In the cloud opening, distant lights shifted. I felt observers lean closer. Silver words appeared on the envelope. Opening demonstration accepted. Use of unnamed beginner technique noted as either supreme confidence or poor manners. Marcus looked at me. You have insulted them back. Good. Nora recalled her spear. The hand missed because of him. I saw, Vera said. That means it did not endure me. She threw the spear through the cloud. The black seam opened among the distant stars. Silver lightning crossed the violet circle. Something on the other side moved away quickly. A second message appeared. Additional local combatant acknowledged. Please stop. Nora smiled. The hand dissolved from the northern valleys. Uprooted trees settled. The violet print remained in the earth, but no town stood there. Westbridge's barrier rebuilt from the bell outward. The cloud eye narrowed. Before it closed, a final image formed beyond it. An amphitheater made from galaxies, with countless silhouettes seated around a central platform. Every silhouette held an object designed to interrupt speech. Bells, blades, horns, jaws, thunder, and several devices I could not understand pointed toward one empty place. My place. Then the sky returned to a question mark. The envelope remained in my hand. 90 days, Marcus said. I am not going. He stared at me. They threatened to declare the world boring. We know it is not. That is not the point. Nora climbed onto the damaged rail. If you do not go, I will. The letter is addressed to me. Then I will take it. Vera folded her tablets around the envelope before Nora could. Attendance is optional, she said. Quiet province designation limits travel and divine contact. It does not destroy the world. Marcus placed one hand over his heart. A universe that refuses our exhibitions is effectively destroyed. I am going back to bed. West Tower stairwell was blocked by 600 students. They had heard the challenge through Marcus's horns. Some carried notebooks. Others were already suggesting names. The first year who created Furious Orange held a banner reading WESTBRIDG is not boring. Beyond them, the entire courtyard waited. I considered using wind to leave. The question mark cloud flashed one last time. The system pane appeared. New audience scale detected. Interstellar. Potential name multiplier. Unknown. My interest became inconveniently real. I looked at the envelope again. If I attend, I said, they will all attempt to interrupt. Vera nodded. Every territory. Yes, at once, traditionally. Nora's eyes sharpened. Marcus slowly raised a horn. I pictured the galactic amphitheater. Countless beings ready to attack the instant I began. They believed interruption proved whether a name deserved completion. Silas had treated long names as weakness. The Outer Realms treated them as sport. For the first time, I wanted the longest possible route because everyone would be trying to stop it. The image was not complete. 90 days gave me time. I will consider it, I said. The courtyard erupted. Marcus announced acceptance. I corrected him. He announced dramatic conditional acceptance. Vera added a line to the envelope specifying that no final decision had been made. The Outer Realms replied with odds. They gave me 17 seconds. Nora read the number. Too generous. You gave me 5. You were less prepared. Marcus turned to the students. Training begins at dawn. For whom? Everyone. If the universe watches Westbridge, the background must be convincing. The faculty attempted to object. The students had already begun repainting the damaged tower. I returned to the lower library after sunrise. The academy above sounded like an army preparing for a festival. Silas sat at his table copying a beginner barrier spell. He glanced at the black envelope. Another silence. The opposite. I handed him the challenge. He read it without expression until he reached the final question. Was that your longest technique name? His eye twitched. No, he said. No what? Do not involve me. I did not ask. Your blonde companion has already requested a list of forbidden adjectives. That sounds like involvement. Silas pushed the envelope away. The Outer Realms are older than Vera's court. They do not fear power. They fear predictability. They called my attack short. They want you to react. I am reacting. Obviously. He returned to the barrier spell. I stood. You could help by doing nothing. I have trained for that. I left him with the books. Outside, Nora waited beside the original target dummy. She had placed her spear against its straw shoulder. 17 seconds, she said. I heard. Begin. Now, she attacked. The spear point stopped against my clapper. Every training attempt lasts until I interrupt you, she said. What if I am not ready? Then it will be realistic. Marcus's horns sounded from the tower. Students filled the arena rails. Vera's tablets appeared above the gate. I had not agreed to training. I had not accepted the challenge. I did not even have the beginning of a name. Everyone waited. I inhaled. Nora moved before I spoke. Nora's spear hit my shoulder before I found a first word. I crossed the arena, struck the wall, and landed beside the original target dummy. Attempt 1, Marcus announced. Duration less than an inhale. I was not attempting. The assembly will appreciate that distinction. Nora rested the spear on one shoulder. Again, I stood. This time I prepared an image first. Road crossing stars, a fortress at its end. Gates opening for a figure whose title grew each time someone tried to stop him. I drew breath. Vera dropped a tablet on my head. Attempt 2, Marcus said. Defeated by educational material. The students laughed. Embarrassment detected. Multiplier unaffected. That was progress, although the headache reduced my appreciation. The assembly's challenge was not part of the current conflict. First silence was gone. Westbridge was safe. I could refuse, keep teaching, and spend the next year defeating Nora in increasingly unsuitable locations. But every time I pictured the galactic amphitheater, the image became more precise. Countless interrupters waited around a central platform. Some would attack the voice. Others would attack breath, concentration, memory, or time. A longer name gave them more chances. Completing it would prove something simple enough for any world to understand. They could hear me start and still fail to stop the finish. I wanted that moment. Training changed the academy. Nora attacked without warning. Vera interrupted with laws. Marcus interrupted with embarrassment. Students were encouraged to interfere using harmless spells, thrown cushions, bells, bad reviews, and once a goat. The goat was not approved. Ate half of Marcus's cue cards and became the most successful participant that week. I learned to hold complete images while ordinary life continued around them. I prepared Crimson Sun while teaching a class. I preserved Glacial Funeral through lunch. I maintained the Midnight Throne while repairing a book, dodging Nora's spear, and listening to Marcus explain why the goat needed an official title. The system recorded improvement. Paired name stability, 11 seconds, then 14, then 17. The assembly's estimate stopped feeling generous. My new attack refused to settle. Every version became predictable. Eternal road to the fortress beyond. Heaven sounded large but passive. Grand arrival of the uninterrupted star sovereign depended too much on the interruption itself. Final declaration of the mortal, whose previous final attack was apparently not final enough, amused me, but the image ended with paperwork. Silas heard the failures through the basement ceiling. One evening, a folded page appeared beneath my door. It contained 3 words: stop using final. No signature was necessary. He was right. The outer challenge was not a final battle. Treating every new height as the end made the name smaller. I crossed final out. The next image opened. Not a fortress, a procession. I saw every technique I had used moving across the stars. A tiny fireball led them. Behind it came the crowned red sphere, the black mantle, the frozen palace, the vertical ocean, the petty pebble, the childish comet, the one-word grave, the categoryless warm thing, the kneeling throne, and the white-crimson creature that had chased silence beyond the sky. They were not separate attacks. They were the introduction. At the end of the procession walked something I had not named yet. It wore no fixed shape because every interruption would add to it. Bells would become armor, blades would become a crown, stolen breath would become wings. Every attempt to stop the name would make the finished image more dramatic. The system pain displayed, adaptive conviction structure detected. Important warning, complexity increasing. I simplified the rule. Whatever interrupted me became part of the entrance. No calculations, no hidden conditions. The image was a person walking forward while the opposition decorated him. I liked it immediately. On the 30th day, Nora tested the idea. We stood in the West practice ring at dawn. No crowd had been invited. Marcus was naturally present. Vera watched from the roof. I prepared the unnamed procession. Grand, Nora's spear crossed my voice. Silver sound entered the image. The leading fireball gained a silver tail. Procession of the, she opened her silence field. The missing sound became black steps beneath the procession. Unreasonably, Vera placed a law against adjectives over the ring. The restriction became a white banner marked with one forbidden word. Decorated, Marcus shouted. His cape is crooked. Embarrassment struck. The procession acquired a crooked cape. I stopped. The incomplete technique dissolved. Nora lowered her spear. Why? The crooked cape improved it too much. Marcus looked proud. I adjusted my actual cape. The silver repair seam had survived every battle, including the final cannon. It was no longer a reminder that Nora tore it. It was the reason strangers recognized me before they knew my face. I kept the crooked cape in the image. By day 45, my prepared name stability reached 22 seconds. I could move while speaking. I could change pace without losing conviction. I could pause for one beat after an interruption and continue from the same image. Vera insisted pauses would be judged as weakness. Marcus called them dramatic control. Nora used them to stab me. All 3 were useful. The world outside Westbridge returned to ordinary danger. Dungeons opened. Monsters attacked roads. Famous mages resumed arguing about rankings. None required the cannon. I joined one academy expedition to the eastern mountains, where the world amphitheater had settled. Its stone seats now surrounded a lake. The former opening to the first silence had filled with clear water. People had turned it into a tourist site. Vendors sold black candy shaped like absinthe. Children stood on the central platform and shouted attack names into the seats. The echo made every phrase sound larger. One mountain creature rose from the lake during our visit. It had 6 stone heads and enough armor to ignore the expedition's spells. The students looked at me. I looked at them. You have techniques, I said. It is immune. To what? Everything we tried. Try something else. They did. One group froze the lake beneath it. Another used wind to turn its heads. A third struck the exposed joints. The creature fell without me raising a hand. Marcus stood beside me on the shore. You could have defeated it more dramatically. Yes. Are you unwell? I wanted to see the class. Teaching has changed you. Do not say that. The creature stirred. One stone head rose behind the students. I flicked the framed divine warning notice I had brought for the lecture. Its wooden corner struck the creature between the eyes and shattered all 6 heads. The students stared. Educational material, I said. Nora heard and demanded a rematch using only classroom objects. I declined until she produced 2 desks and a bell. The academy placed bets. At day 60, the Outer Realms sent a second envelope. Current odds, 12 seconds. Additional local combatant odds, 9 seconds. Nora objected to being lower. They expect you to attack rather than speak, I said. Correct, then 9 seconds is generous. She sent the envelope back with a spear hole through the number. The odds changed to 8. Marcus began recording my possible introductions. Most were longer than the technique. I rejected everyone. He had introduced me honestly during the final battle. Nothing else needed to exceed it. On day 70, the system displayed the complete new name. Grand procession of the unreasonably decorated Victory King who collects every interruption, wears every failed objection as a cape, and arrives before the audience finishes doubting him. I read it silently. It was long. It was not as long as the assembly expected. The image was perfect. I could add a subtitle later. That thought felt dangerous enough to be promising. I did not speak the name. The assembly would hear it first. By day 89, the question mark cloud had become a violet gate. Stars appeared through it during daylight. Westbridge's roofs filled with equipment, banners, protective crystals, and unauthorized merchandise. The Outer Realms sent the final envelope. One representative may accompany the challenged mortal. Nora and Marcus reached for it simultaneously. Vera's tablet took it first. The representative must remain outside the central platform, she read. Then Nora, Marcus said, I need a better view. Nora looked at him. For narration, he added. Vera could enter through her court without using the representative place. Marcus therefore claimed the official position. Nora declared that she would travel through one of her spear's black seams whether invited or not. Nobody attempted to stop her. That night, I returned to the examination arena alone. The original target dummy waited beneath the repaired bell arch. The great iron bell was gone, but blue ribbons still hung from the wood. Someone had preserved them after the accident. I stood where my fireball had failed. The system pane opened. Name resonance, highest completed multiplier, 33. Highest controlled multiplier inside an inhabited boundary, 24. Current public expectation, unreasonable. Embarrassment, none. I formed a tiny orange flame. Fireball. It crossed the arena and touched the coin-sized burn. This time it left no new mark. Perfect. The violet gate opened above Westbridge. The assembly had arrived. The gate did not pull us through. Brought the assembly to Westbridge. The question mark cloud widened until the night sky became a circular window. Beyond it, galaxies formed rows of seats. The nearest silhouettes were larger than Vera's entire court. Some had faces, others had bells, flames, mouths, or rotating symbols where faces should have been. Everyone looked down at the examination arena. The central platform appeared over the academy without touching it. Silver letters formed above the original target. Preliminary hearing. Demonstrate eligibility. Time allowed, 12 seconds. They reduced it again, Marcus said. He stood on the arena rail in a formal burgundy coat with 3 horns strapped together. Nora waited on my left with her reforged spear. Vera's tablets covered the academy towers. Students filled the seats where they had once laughed at my fireball. I walked into the center circle. The outer silhouettes raised their interruptions. I did not intend to use the grand procession. Its first audience was supposed to be the full assembly in 90 days, not a preliminary window over my school. The silver text changed. Failure will confirm quiet province status. Marcus lifted all 3 horns. They have insulted the scheduling. Nora lowered her spear. Use it. This is not the assembly. They are watching. System pane opened. Interstellar audience confirmed. Potential interruption count, 7. Potential multiplier, unavailable until completion. The nearest 7 silhouettes moved. A bell without a body. A blade made from folded distance. A mouth filled with clocks. A white flame that consumed attention. A hand carrying a cage of breath. A horn aimed backward into memory. A black crown covered in eyes. Each had chosen a different part of speech to destroy. The arena bell rang. The preliminary began. I prepared the full image. Grand. The celestial bell struck. Its note entered my bones and made the first word sound small. In the image, the note became a silver road. A tiny fireball at the front of the procession rolled onto it. Procession. The distance blade cut the space between me and the next word. I stepped across the cut. The image gained a doorway made from folded stars. Of the unreasonably decorated, the clock mouth bit 3 seconds from the arena. Night jumped. My cape moved without crossing the wind between positions. Stolen time appeared above the procession as 3 dark banners, each showing a moment the assembly had failed to remove. 9 seconds remained. The white flame struck my eyes. I forgot that anyone watched. The arena seats became empty shapes. Marcus's horns lost importance. The cosmic audience vanished from my attention. Embarrassment could not form without other people, but neither could anticipation. I continued for myself. Victory King, the image sharpened. The figure at the procession's end raised his head. He wore no face, only my conviction that every obstacle had made his entrance better. The attention flame became a white lining inside his crooked cape. Who collects every interruption? The breath cage closed around my chest. Air stopped. The bell clapper hung beneath Westbridge. Its celestial ember answered through the stone. 1 bronze vibration entered my lungs. It could not give me breath, but it reminded my body that the sentence already existed in full. I did not need to create the next words. I released them from the conviction. Whereas every failed objection as a cape. My voice crossed the arena without air. The outer hand tightened. Its cage shattered. The memory horn sounded backward. I stood again at the practical examination. My weak fireball drifted toward the dummy. Laughter entered from the upper tiers. My mouth closed around scarlet orb of something I had been too ashamed to complete. For one instant, the grand procession disappeared. Then the falling academy bell entered the memory. I saw myself beneath it with one hand raised. The outer horn had chosen the wrong past. Every moment returned behind the fireball. Nora's lightning halo, the frozen dungeon, the vertical ocean, the shame choir, the childish comet, the silent siege. Gods colliding because I inhaled, Seela's lunging at the word thing, the white crimson creature beyond the sky, and 1,000 thunder rulers lowering their weapons. The procession became longer than the memory attack could contain. It arrives, the black crown descended. Its eyes showed every possible way the sentence might fail. Nora's spear through my throat, Vera's tablet across my mouth, Marcus saying something so embarrassing that conviction collapsed. The assembly leaving before I finished, the world becoming a quiet province because I paused one beat too long. Those possibilities joined the crown as jewels. 3 seconds remained. The 7 interrupters attacked together. Nora moved between me and the distance blade. Her spear caught it inside a black seam and threw it back toward the celestial bell. Vera's tablets did not block the attacks. They drew a line around Westbridge, ensuring every effect stayed focused on me. Marcus raised his horns, then stopped. He understood I did not need another introduction. I spoke the final phrase. Before the audience finishes doubting him, the system pain filled the sky. Name complete. Conviction absolute. Interruption conversion 7 of 7. Audience scale interstellar. Multiplier 41. The grand procession arrived. A tiny orange fireball crossed the arena first. Touched the target dummy and left the same coin-sized burn from my final examination. Behind it, the silver road widened through the gate. Folded stars became doors. Stolen seconds flew as banners. White flame lined a crooked black cape. The broken breath cage became armor around a towering figure. Recovered memories marched in rows at his back. The crown of failed possibilities settled over his head. He stepped onto the preliminary platform. Every outer silhouette rose. The 7 interrupters had become parts of him. Their original owners pulled, but the bell, blade, clocks, flame, cage, horn, and crown no longer answered them. Victory King carried no weapon. He did not need one. He walked to the edge of the galaxy-sized amphitheater and sat in the empty central seat as if it had been prepared for him. Nearest cosmic figures backed away. The system asked for a target. I selected none. The 41 times amplified technique contained enough force to cross the outer realms. Releasing it as an attack might start the next war before I had finished the current celebration. Point was the arrival. I lowered my hand. The Victory King crossed one leg over the other. Then the entire procession dissolved into gold, silver, black, and violet ribbons that wrapped around the question mark cloud. The academy remained untouched. The target dummy remained standing. The coin-sized burn smoked. Silver words above the arena vanished. New ones replaced them. Eligibility confirmed. Revised odds, completion expected. Revised concern, technique may be longer at formal assembly. Please do not add a subtitle. Marcus made a sound through all 3 horns at once. The assembly's request arrived too late. The system pain displayed. Subtitle opportunity detected. I dismissed it. For now, Nora recalled her spear. 41. Interstellar audience. You did not attack. It was an entrance. Then the fight has not started. That is the point. Vera looked through the gate at the outer silhouettes. Several had already left their seats. The oldest powers beyond heaven had prepared to judge a mortal's words and watch their own interruptions decorate his throne. You have altered the assembly's expectation, she said. Good, they will prepare accordingly. Better. Marcus jumped from the rail. Formal announcement. No, the universe just requested that you not add a subtitle. I heard. The universe has issued a direct challenge to my profession. He opened his largest horn. Nora placed the spearhead inside it. Marcus reconsidered. The cosmic platform faded. The 7 interrupters returned to their owners, changed only by small marks from the procession. Celestial bell carried a silver road around its rim. The distance blade had a door-shaped notch. The clock mouth was missing exactly 3 seconds and appeared annoyed. Before the gate closed, the outer assembly sent one final object. Seat, it descended through the question mark cloud and landed in the examination arena. Black material curved around a red-gold center. It was sized for me. Across its back, silver letters named the occupant. Evan, no title. Marcus stared at the simplicity. We can fix that. Do not. Heaven's most unnecessarily specific problem would fit across the top. No, the extremely large. Nora broke one arm off the seat. The cosmic audience vanished. Westbridge's ordinary night returned. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the students rushed down from the stands. They surrounded the seat, target dummy, and smoking coin-sized burn. Questions filled the arena. Had I intended 41? Was the Victory King me? Would the subtitle include the goat? Did the fireball receive the multiplier? Could they attend the outer assembly? I answered the last question first. No, Marcus climbed onto the cosmic seat. Applications will open tomorrow. Get off. This is a historic artifact. It has my name on it, which is why I am preserving it. Nora pulled the seat from beneath him with her spear. Marcus landed on the sand and continued speaking without interruption. The headmaster arrived after the crowd had begun carrying the seat toward the dining hall. He examined the new burn on the dummy. Is the outer threat resolved? There was no threat. He looked at the violet handprint visible over the northern hills. The greeting was aggressive. They changed their mind. Will you leave in 90 days? I looked up at the question mark cloud. It had returned to white, but 7 colored ribbons now curved along its lower edge. The formal assembly waited beyond it. Nora wanted the first attack. Marcus wanted the audience. Vera wanted to know whether local functionaries were invited. Even Silas would hear the preparation from the basement, whether he participated or not. Probably, I said. The headmaster nodded as if I had said I would visit Harbor City. Your class begins at 8. Tomorrow, the world still requires mages. That was true. The celebration lasted until morning. Harbor City's ships lit the clouds. Westbridge students attempted the grand procession name and failed at different places. First years never reached unreasonably decorated without laughing. The gods watching through cloud openings disappeared whenever someone invited them down. I left before Marcus could schedule another speech. The lower library was quiet. Silas had fallen asleep over the beginner barrier book. A page beside him contained a list of possible assembly interruptions in his neat handwriting. He had crossed out the heading that said assistance and replaced it with reasons this will fail. There were 43 reasons. I added number 44. The subtitle will be longer. Then I returned to my old desk. For the first time since the system appeared, I opened one of the spellbooks I had been repairing before the practical exam. Its pages described ordinary flame control. No ultimate attacks, no cosmic threats, no instructions on addressing a galactic audience. I read until sunrise. At 8, 600 students filled the lecture hall. The Outer Realm seat had been placed behind the instructor's desk. Nora had repaired its broken arm with the black metal from an old spear. Marcus had added a small plaque despite my instructions. It said, reserved for the local problem. Vera sat by the window. 3 gods hid in the clouds. The first year with the screaming orange held a fresh practice target. I wrote one word on the board. Conviction. Today, I said, we're going to practice names that actually mean something to you. A student raised her hand. Can they be ridiculous? Especially then. How long? I looked through the window at the question mark cloud. As long as you can finish. The resonance bell rang beneath Westbridge. Above the world, the outer assembly added my name to its central seat. Across the continent, people repeated stories that were already less dramatic than the truth. Nora waited after class with her spear. Marcus had printed travel banners for a journey I had not formally accepted. Vera pretended not to read them. I formed a fireball over one finger. System pain appeared. Name quality, painfully ordinary. Conviction, absolute. Multiplier, 1. The same weak orange spell that started everything now held enough control to frighten gods. I let it hover above my hand while the students watched. I still preferred quiet. I had simply become very good at ending it. The first student named her spell Gentle Lantern for the room, where nobody has to pretend they are brave. The phrase was longer than the flame deserved. Her conviction made it steady. A pale gold light filled the lecture hall without casting shadows. The hidden gods outside leaned closer. The student stared at her hand, surprised that an image personal to her could be stronger than an incantation copied from a book. The next student attempted furious orange returns for revenge against the breakfast table. An orange appeared above his desk wearing a red band around its peel. It screamed. Nora cut it in half with a piece of chalk. The room smelled like citrus for an hour. I taught the lesson anyway. Some names were short, some required half a page, most did not increase power. That did not make them failures. Students were learning whether the words matched the spell in their minds, and for once nobody pretended that sounding ridiculous was worse than casting badly. Marcus entered near the end carrying travel banners. One said WSTBRIDGE to the stars. Another said, please wait until HE finishes. The longest banner contained the entire grand procession name and extended through the corridor, down the stairs, and into the courtyard. 90 days is enough time for you to cancel this, I said. 89, that is still enough. Nora examined the lettering. You misspelled decorated. Marcus went pale. The system pain appeared. Embarrassment source, associated promotional material. Multiplier unaffected. He ran into the corridor and began pulling the banner back. Vera closed her book. The court has received observer requests from every divine territory. Decline them. I did. Good. They're coming anyway. Nora rested her reforged spear against the cosmic seat. Then they can hold the banner. Class ended at noon. The students left carrying safer flames, stranger names, and one restrained orange. The original target dummy remained at the front with its coin-sized burn. I considered replacing it. I did not. After everyone left, the resonance bell rang once. The cosmic seat answered. Silver light crossed its back and formed a map of the path beyond heaven. 90 days of distance folded into one route. The assembly was no longer merely inviting me. It had placed a road inside Westbridge. Marcus returned with the corrected banner. We can leave whenever you are ready. Hearing is in 89 days. Dramatic arrivals should be early enough to become rumors. Nora picked up her spear. We leave tomorrow. I have classes. Vera turned a tablet toward me. Headmaster's handwriting appeared. Guest instructor leave approved. I looked out the window. He stood in the courtyard beside packed academy crates. He had approved the journey before I had. Silas emerged from the lower library carrying a stack of repaired books. He saw the star map, closed his eyes, and handed me the top volume. It was the beginner barrier text. "You will need something simple after your complicated entrance," he said. "Is that assistance?" "It is an attempt to preserve the place where I am confined. Reasonable." The book's cover bore a new title in his neat handwriting. "Ordinary Shield. No adjectives, no rulers, no claims of eternity." System Pain evaluated it. Name quality, plain, conviction sufficient. I put it under one arm. We gathered on the west tower at sunset. The question mark cloud waited above us. Nora stood at the rail, already prepared to jump through. Marcus wore 3 horns and carried enough banners to establish a small nation. Vera's tablets formed a white path behind the cosmic route. Below, Westbridge filled every courtyard. The students began the final canon name. Their timing was still terrible. One side of the academy reached personal grudge edition before the other side finished heaven devouring. The dining hall added extremely large warm thing in the middle. Someone near the dungeon shouted furious orange. The combined phrase had no meaning at all. It had enthusiasm. I stepped onto the rail. The repaired cape moved behind me. Its silver seam caught the light. Gods watched from clouds, champions watched through spell screens, and the outer assembly waited beyond the stars with instruments raised to interrupt. I had spent years hiding spell names inside my head because one laugh could make them fail. Now an entire universe was preparing to attack before I finished. The thought did not embarrass me. It sounded magnificent. Nora jumped first. Her spear opened a black seam through the question mark. Marcus followed while shouting an introduction too long for the distance. Vera walked through without looking back. I raised one finger. The tiny fireball appeared. Name quality, painfully ordinary. Conviction, absolute. Multiplier, 1. I left it above Westbridge as a warm orange light. Then I stepped into the stars. The first thing beyond the gate was not an enemy. It was a line. Millions of beings waited along a road of silver light, each hoping to see whether I would announce myself. Some were human-shaped. Others floated as armor, feathers, eyes, flames, or moving pieces of night. Everyone became quiet when my boot touched the road. Marcus inhaled through all 3 horns. I covered them with wind. Not yet. The distant assembly rose around us, larger than the world we had left. Bells and blades turned toward the central platform. The 7 preliminary interrupters displayed the marks my procession had given them. The clockmouth showed its missing seconds like a scar. Nora looked across the crowd. How many? Vera's tablets counted until the numbers stopped fitting. Enough, I said. The system pain filled my vision. Interstellar audience increasing. Public expectation. Impossible. Potential interruption count. All. Embarrassment detected. I waited. Embarrassment source. Marcus's travel banners visible from orbit. Multiplier unaffected. One banner had unfolded behind us through the gate. The corrected word decorated was written in red and twice the size of everything around it. Nora cut the banner free. It drifted into space where an outer creature caught it and raised it like a sacred text. Marcus wiped one eye. My work has crossed worlds. The assembly's central bell moved. Its first strike would begin the formal challenge early. Every interrupter lifted at once. The road beneath us shook. Vera prepared her laws. Nora rotated her spear. Marcus finally lowered his horns. I held the image of the grand procession complete inside me. Beyond the gate, the small fireball remained over Westbridge. I could feel it burning with exactly enough heat to light the tower and nothing more. I drew one breath. The universe attacked. Every bell, blade, clock, crown, flame, and impossible mouth reached for my unfinished sentence at the same exact instant. I smiled and began the name.